Asante sana Halila. Aha. The way you move here. Yamani, thank you very much. I'm so happy to have you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor and privilege to be standing on behalf of Media Convergency in front of your esteemed presence at this event where we are specifically here to launch the Digital NGO report titled An Overview of the Digital Ecosystem, Emerging and Applied Technologies in NGOs in Tanzania. There is a booklet on the table. I hope everybody has one, so you get to read the mouthful title of the report. With further ado, I would like to thank our guest of honor, the Minister of Information, Communication and Technology, Dr. Faustin Dungolile. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of our esteemed panelists for today, who are not only experts in innovation, information and technology, but are also part of pioneers who are in one way or another pushing boundaries in bringing forth digital transformation for our country. I am so excited and look forward to having their evident, powerful information and insights. Our panelists are Ms. Christine Mosisi, the country representative from UNDP, Semkai Kilonzo, who is not here. So Semkai was really excited to be part of this conversation, but unfortunately this morning he's not well. He sends his regards, and we are hoping at least to get some insights or some sort of contribution from him through text. If at all we'll be able to manage, we'll share them through our facilitator. Our other panelists are the executive director, the country director, Diana Nsima, from DOT Tanzania. There is Mike Mushi, the executive director of Jamii Media, and also Nelson Malekela, the founding partner of IPF Softwares. I would also like to acknowledge the esteemed presence of representatives from the embassy and development partners, the esteemed presence of NGO leaders and decision makers from more than 20 organizations in this room. We really humbly thank you so much. And the esteemed presence of the players who are part of the discussion, implementation, executions in the tech ecosystem, as well as media partners. At Media Convergency, we drink on information and strive on technology. That is where and how the study was born. The study that gave us this report was stimulated from Media Convergency's grasp on the digital gaps in digital gaps in most organizations, and not only NGOs. We chose to start with the NGO because we identified them as a great landscape, I would say, community that has a lot of potential for digital transformation. We have been working on the report for the last 6 months. We first intended to do the study in October 2020. I think that was too ambitious, but I guess it was worth the wait. 9 months later, we have achieved the intent with abundant cooperation from the community. The NGOs and their representatives, their leaders, and all the community was very, very supportive, cooperative, and portrayed interest and excitement to be part of this report and to know what the study will give out. It gives us a pleasure to have had the opportunity and now presenting what we found. The study would have not been possible without that support. I would also like to acknowledge some government officials when it comes to consultancies and how what we need to consider in releasing the report, specifically the Tanzanian Commission for Science and Technology. And I would also like to give a shout out and thank you, the wonderful Media Convergency team who have worked so diligently on this study. Thank you very much. A special thanks to the Minister of Information, Communication and Technology, vested interest and recommendation and support towards achieving the study with conviction as the right approach towards adoption of digital economy in Tanzania across all sectors. So there is a variety of things which really inspired and pushed us to make sure that we have this report. The support has been very positive. Thank you. While we cannot directly mention, we've had insights and we've had influence from individuals. We cannot really mention every individual, but we would like to sincerely say that they have been a fundamental success of this report. So Media Convergency extends sincere gratitude to each one of them. We look forward to collaborative efforts, partnerships, holistic, innovative solutions, and being part of this digital transformative journey in an impactful way in our nation, in Tanzania, and for Tanzania. Thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to the conversations, really, really excited, and thank you for being here. I promise that I've written everything by myself. It's only that I can be able to deliver while reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Asha, for all the incredible work you've done, especially during the year where a lot of uncertainty loomed. And we can say Tanzania stood firm in various ways. We're going to proceed right into our panel discussion for this morning. And without further ado, I'd love to invite our panelists. But right before I do that, could I ask that mics be placed at the stage, please? Wonderful. As that is happening, I will proceed to invite my panel for the day. First, I will start with the incredible Diana Nensima. Now, Diana is the country director for DOT Tanzania. What many don't know, or probably some have gotten the privilege to know, is Diana is also a champion for all things gender. I have known Diana as somebody who is very passionate, very committed to change. And when we talk about transformative leaders, in leading transformation in Tanzania, Diana Nensima is not only a country director, but she's a human that is dedicated her life, or her life's work for that. And so, kwa hapo, asante sana Diana, karibu. It's a pleasure to have you on this panel. Next, I am going to call to the stage Mr. Nelson Malekela, who is the co-founder of IPF Software's company. I, for one, leading Unleashed Africa Social Ventures, have gotten the esteemed honor of working with Nelson and his team. And I can tell you that a software company has every right to be on this panel. If any software company has any right to be on this panel, it is IPF Softwares. Because not only do they build platforms that can transform lives, but they dedicate themselves to understand the problem and to truly build a solution that can transform and solve problems. They are invested in making sure that Tanzania moves forward. So for them, it's not just building the next app or the next website. For them, it's asking themselves, how can this really transform and meet the needs of the people? Karibu sana, Nelson. Next on the panel, I'd love to call Ms. Christine Musisi, who's the resident representative for UNDP. Now, many times I wonder to myself when I read and go through Ms. Musisi's bio, how old are you? Because in all honesty, if you go through the incredible work that she has done for Africa, not only in Tanzania, but across the continent, it is not only inspiring, but it is also challenging. She comes with a wealth of knowledge. She comes with a lot of wisdom. And the wisdom is not only to check boxes, but to truly be able to share this knowledge so that we as youth as well can be able to be part of this journey for Africa's collective transformation. Ms. Musisi, karibu sana. And finally, I'd love to bring to the stage somebody whose name we might all be accustomed to, Mr. Mike Mushi, who is the managing director for Jamii Media Company. Mr. Mushi's background in the tech space or the digital space in Tanzania spans a decade. Is it more than? More than a decade, yes. We have known him for pioneering a platform, Jamii Forums, and right now he is invested in making sure that he's building the capacity of media, startups, as well as now civil society to truly be able to leverage the power of the digital space to spearhead transformation. So kama mnavyoona, we have a panel that is not only expert in terms of knowledge, but they have expertise in terms of heart and determination to make sure that transformation is happening. A hand of applause for our panel. Hello, hello. Yes, we are still live. To everybody who's joining online, karibuni sana. We have just started our panel discussion for the day, and we're going to run it in a very swift, and it's going to be very engaging as well. So if you do have a question or if you do have a comment, please do script it down so that we also get to see it. For everybody who's here as well as everybody who's online, if you do find a takeaway or something that stands out to you, please, in the spirit of digital, tweet, share, take photos, make sure that people who are not here can also get a chance to participate. This is how we're going to run our panel for the day. Karibuni sana. I'm going to invite you to probably reintroduce yourself if you would like. But starting with, I'm going to shoot a few questions, starting with Diana, and we're going to come all the way down. It's going to be a conversation. Diana said she warned me not to put her on the spot, and I will try because I am known to do that. So Diana, DOT Tanzania, an NGO that is spearheading transformation and truly building the capacity of youth to be the change that we keep talking about. And right now we're talking about digital technologies, digital opportunity, trust, right? Why do you think that, this conversation is important in this space? Can we start with that? Could you lay the stage for why is this relevant?
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Halila, I have to say, all the incredible comments that you gave me over there, I forgot that was me, but thank you. So the last 1 year, I've had several things said about technology. I've had digital technologies, I've had digital ecosystem, I've had digital transformation, the 3 bedfellows, all these things around technology. But I have to say that digital transformation is not, or is less about digital, but more about transformation. So whoever is here today feeling like I'm not techie, I don't know technology, it's less about tech, it's more about transformation. So for me, why it matters is because when COVID hit, there was a panic attack that happened across mainstream and traditional organizations. And if I ask a question here today, were we part of the disrupted or the disruptors? Were we disrupted? How many of us got disrupted? A show of hands. All of us, right? So it is a conversation that really, really is important because for the first time we saw that youth were not the only marginalized. We were all marginalized. Our organizations were shaken. We did not know how to cope being online, to support our target groups being online, to thrive online in a space that we're not used to. I know even maybe the government felt their fair share of how do we do these things online. So it's something that shook the entire continent and it shook our country as a whole. So when I look at that, I really, really do think that it's high time that we catch up with the pace in case we haven't. It's high time that we see technology as a culture, as a lifestyle, and not as something that is inventing and it's going to end. It's not the end. It's going to still be around for the very, very many years to come. So the earlier that we build this resilience amongst ourselves around technology, I think the better.
Well said. Digital is less about technology and more about trust. Okay. Maybe I think this is a, okay, but is this better? Much better. Okay. Digital is less about technology and more about transformation. Thank you for starting us off there. Now, proceeding with Nelson, IPF Softwares. You use technologies to build solutions for different clients. But in your introduction, I talked about how you are vested in transformation. You work with different NGOs, social enterprises, and those in the private sector. As a software company, what do you think is the role that not just digital, data plays to inform how you approach building the technologies that you build? Because of course you use digital space, right? But then data also informs how you build this technology. So what is the role? What role do you feel, or what role do you give data that your clients bring to the table as you're approaching this conversation of transformation?
Thank you, Kalila. I think
Perhaps put the mic closer.
so. I think I'll start this with talking about how many. Mic on two.
This was intentional. We just wanted to show you that sometimes technology doesn't always work. It was planned.
Okay, so I'll start to talk about this in terms of the number of solutions we see not maturing enough to create impact they were supposed to create. And I think all of this stems from the fact that we are not using data to inform us. So from the fact that maybe a solution is not a market fit, maybe we do not need this solution at all, or maybe the data we collect are not the data we're supposed to collect. So for me, I think it's very clear, and I think that's the reason a lot of organizations right now are deep diving in a data sector, because at the end of the day, it's obvious, and I think it's just that we have a problem in terms of, for example, interpreting or analyzing data we have, or maybe capturing the right data. But I think its role is very obvious.
So its role, what is its role?
Again, how can you inform, how can you make any decision without capturing the right data? I mean, we all have to rely on the background, on how the state of things were before we move forward, right? So yeah.
So I'm going to pin that right now and come back to it, the right data.
Okay.
And perhaps just to ensure that we are in line with time, could I ask somebody from the organizing team to just let me know when we are at 10 minutes, when we're at 15, and when we're at 20? Okay. Great. Miss Karibu Sana. Like I said, I always wonder, how old are you? Because you look under 40, 42 there. and I bring that up jokingly, but also you have seen a lot of transformation happen on the continent. You have seen dreams, desires, things being dreamt and being solutions implemented, things come into fruition, but the challenges of implementing or meeting some of these dreams with actual. Can you hear me? Yes. With actual impact. Ms. Musisi, probably you can open us up with your keynote. I do believe that you had, well, not a keynote, with some words that you had prepared, and then I will go for it and ask you a question.
Thank you very much, Kelly. I want to first recognize our guest of honor, Dr. Faustin Dugulile. It's a pleasure to see you again today. I think we were together was it last week or this week? No, it was this week, actually. So many things are happening. There seems to be an escalation of events, of work, of expectations. The world is changing, and I think the main question is, are we up to the current pace of development? We really need to rise up to the challenge. Also, congratulations to Asha for the launch of the digital ecosystem study in terms of its impact, or where NGO community relates to that in Tanzania. And I don't want to go through a whole speech because my colleagues haven't, but I want us to acknowledge that the world is indeed digital, has gone digital, and we have no choice, whether we are public sector, non-governmental, private sector, we all need to embrace digitization and technologies to thrive in today's fast-paced and constantly changing world. We call it the VUCA world. It is volatile, unpredictable, complex, increasingly complex, and ambiguous. So we are no longer in a time when you have a 5-year development plan and keep it as a 5-year development plan from day one to the last day. Things are constantly changing, and we need to be adaptive, flexible, and relevant to the pace that the world is moving. Now, as we seek to innovative ways to accelerate progress towards the SDGs, indeed, we need to harness the fourth industrial revolution. We have lost development gains over the past 3 decades. We had addressed extreme poverty globally, quite a lot. Access to primary education, primary health care. Globally we've had very good results, and we were on an upward trajectory. But COVID-19 came in and took us towards negative levels. I wish I could show you the graph that we have in our Human Development Report of 2020 that shows how development gains have really reversed because of COVID-19, meaning that we need to totally transform ourselves first, Diana, and transform our mindsets, to say, what is it we can do differently, not only to get back to where we have been, but to still make it to 2030 with having achieved our aspirations. Make it to 2025 as Tanzania, having achieved our aspiration of a higher middle income country status. And to do this, we see that digitization is key. We have seen very good examples of the way digitization has transformed development. And I think that is one of the questions you wanted me to speak to. We have seen, for example, drones and satellites delivering health and humanitarian supplies in very remote, hard-to-reach areas. We have seen advanced technologies support smart cities through around-the-clock active sensors, video surveillance cameras, and data collection and analysis to address traffic disruption or traffic distribution. The system shows this place and that place is congested, and it immediately starts diverting traffic. There are some cities that are very well advanced in this, and mayors usually have a whole screen in their office, and they can see what is happening around the city due to such technologies. They are able to detect crime in advance that it's going to happen, to monitor public service responses and so on. And during the pandemic in 2020, last year, as UNDP, we collaborated with Robotech Labs to mobilize several actors in the innovation ecosystem like DIT, Design Studio, Stick Labs, Uhuru Labs, and others to produce face shields, infrared thermometers, pulse oximeters using 3D printing technologies. I mean, this is in Tanzania. It means that we can use these technologies to advance local level manufacturing and reduce the dependency on, on importation, there were so many things that got stuck simply because we didn't have packaging from China. We can produce that here. Also, there are new land mapping tools that are able to reduce the cost of land use mapping from $600 per unit to $40 per unit. And this is equivalent to a chicken, $40, meaning that a household can actually contribute to land mapping for their, for their own land, which can help scale up these technologies, because Tanzania, I think 80% of the land is not mapped. But with these new technologies, it means we can do it with the contribution of the community to that process, which would really bring the costs down. There are several other examples, like the work we've done in Mwanza Buhongwa ward to use satellite data and crowd mapping to create an overview of waste production and collection with over 10 students in the local universities. And this has led to the city's urban water supply and sanitation authority to add waste collection points to serve the previously unmapped informal settlements. So many examples. Of course, we have M-Pesa. And I see that, as the NGO community, you have a very important role to play in this space. First, in your role in ensuring that essential services reach communities. Second, in facilitating civic voices in decision-making processes using data, concrete evidence, but turning that data into messaging and into usability. Identifying and piloting innovative solutions to the complex challenges that we have at the moment. I'll talk about Funguo later. I just didn't want to take too much space. I'm so excited. There's so much to talk about, but we can come back to it later. Thank you.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much, Ms. Musisi. So one of the things that has stood out for me in just your response is that it is very possible to engage communities at all levels. Because most of the times when you're thinking digital, we're thinking a smartphone, we're thinking an app, we're thinking satellites, we're thinking very advanced technologies. But the fact of the matter is the digital space can be used and leveraged and has the potential to meet people at all stages within the communities that we serve. So it goes back to what Diane said in the beginning and what you also touched on, a mindset shift about how do we then use data as use the digital space and offerings that it presents as a tool for transformation. It is not the end, right? So how do we shift and unlock the boxes that we have kind of kept ourselves within, right? In that spirit, Mike, I'm going to come to you. You do a lot of work to build the capacity in the media sector, right? In how they engage, the digital space, how do they do their work, and so on and so forth. So right now, with regard to the civil society that you've also been engaging with for the past few years, the capacity of the civil society to adequately use and implement data to inform knowledge that then is translated into implementable ideas is questionable at best. There are challenges there. Now, the challenges have various layers to them, right? And it would be beyond me to say that there needs to be a one-shot solution to how we can build this capacity. because so far technology is used as a backup to maintain relevance, you have to have a website. I mean, you need a website. And that website needs to be able to work on a smartphone as well as on a laptop, right? But then we're failing to leverage on its momentous potential to meet people where their needs lie. What, in your expert knowledge, do you feel are the key challenges or the key barriers that those in the civil society are facing that are keeping them from interacting with the digital space as they could?
Thank you, Kels. Well, this is a very good conversation to have, and I've gathered some very good insights to it. So I think I'll page it to there are three stakeholders that all both need transformation, as Diana said. So, and one beneficiary. So there's the government partners themselves, that is one. There's NGOs, that is two, and us, citizens. And then the government becomes the beneficiary out of these matrix. Why am I saying this? Digital to me, or technology, is a tool. It just facilitates what needs to get done. And I think there's a very big misconception that when you talk about digital, we're talking about apps, websites, and social media. And I'll give you a very good example how digital then, for example, disrupts non-profit organizations. So let's say I'm a child's rights organization, and you would see what we call a cybercrime act, and then you're like, okay, this does not concern me. I'm only dealing with children. But the matter of fact is the Cybercrime Act has child pornography in it. So how is your children right-based organization have the capacity to advocate for child pornography laws? Because they are all interconnected to children. And this can go on and forth and forth in other different areas. For example, even in the US, for example, let's say we are all happy about Tesla having automation. But there are 3 million drivers in the US that are going to lose their job because you have these automation cars. So all the labor rights organizations, how are they championing laws about automation? And how is it impacting labor rights, and so digital-based, but across the board in any type of organization that you need. So it's not only a tool, it affects the work that you do. So when we look at from that point of view, you realize that we need then the capability to look ourselves inwards and ask ourselves, so how is our work then impacted by technology? And then how are we stepping forward, reorganizing ourselves to advocate for better laws that protect organizations? And when you look at the development partners' point of view, so I can tell you, for example, that most of the non-profit organizations use emails because that's how you ask for grant. Maybe if emails were not a need, maybe we'll just print and send it to them. So they also are catalysts to accelerate this transformation. Why? This could be put as part and parcel of how they communicate, how they do their work, how they approve total funding to organizations. So ask them what is affecting your type of organization technological-wise, and what are you doing about it? And also, how are we then sharing all this knowledge across the board to better accelerate this transformation? And the third is the citizens themselves. So I think most of non-profit will say that we are speaking for the minority. And my question is, what if the minority can speak for themselves using all these social media platforms that they have? So what are you then doing around that? So how is that then shaping the whole process of doing advocacy? Because then citizens can talk, can say it loud, can tell their public elected leaders on social media that I don't want this, I want that. So then as a civil society organization, how are you then transforming those voices, advocating how you're accelerating or how you're enabling citizens to talk themselves to their leaders so that that voice can be taken forward. So I think it's a matrix of 3 different sectors, and I say the government is a beneficiary. Why? Because we are also pushing the government to go digital. We would want to pay for our taxes online, and they also want to regulate and see what is provided going to the actual beneficiaries. So they then become the beneficiary of all this process.
Thank you so much, Mike. Diana, you wanted to speak to that?
Just piggyback. So I think for the most part, what I've had is around demystifying technology and digital and bringing it close to people, right? With a key focus on, like, relentlessly focusing on your target group. It's less about the machines, right? We're saying automation will take over. I think I read some statistics that by 2030, 20% of the jobs will be automated. So then for me, it's really less about those machines. It's more about the people and how we help them to flourish in that environment. Demystifying technology and bringing it close to people. And when the focus is on the people, then we know best to understand their pain points and design solutions that are stemmed from that point of view. Whether it's around digitization or digitalization, how do we then mobilize resources and solutions towards those pain points? Because again, it's about Kels. If Kels is in Karatu, in the interior, what does she really need to thrive within this space? Yeah.
That's so good, Diana. Thank you. Mike, you spoke on using this space to empower people with knowledge that could allow them to raise their voices, right? On the flip side, this space could also be used in the implementation of interventions, right? But then there is capacity that still needs to be built, not in getting information that can allow you to raise your voice, but to also just go and do the work that civil society actually does on ground. They 100% get their hands and fingers and toes and everything dirty to make sure that we're serving the people. But then there's capacity that needs to be built to make sure that, even as we're calling this the quantum decade, right? We're saying by 2030, everything is transformed. A lot of conversation is primarily driven towards the private sector. And of course, we have some governments that around the world that are heavily investing in building the capacity of their youths, their education sectors, to be able to skill people to meet the needs of this decade. And we're somewhere where they're talking about this decade will determine where we land past 2030. You are either on the side of, Dan, in the beginning you asked, were you the disruptor or are you the disrupted? But then at this point we have a choice. So then how can we bring this conversation to civil society and make sure that we are empowering those that empower everybody on ground, on grassroots level, to be able to use the potential of the digital space to not just remain relevant, but to build relevant solutions. And so, Ms. Musisi, I'm going to jump right to you. I'm going to jump right to you. So we've been talking about data, and Mike, you talked about using different data to empower people to raise their voices. Nelson, you talked about the fact that, yes, that's what we need to use to deliver solutions that truly can scale, remain relevant. But then at the same time, one of the things that we know as we've stepped into this year is we are less than 10 years to 2030. Now every organization and their brother are creating, researching, are into data, right? How, on the flip side of, we celebrate this because we're seeing the critical need for data. But then there's still a big gap, not only in the availability of the data being collected, but also in the visibility of the data that's being collected. And then more so in the aggregation of the different data points, where all these different, we have so many people creating, collecting data, and we have so many different data sets. However, they're not informing collectively informing a train of thought or an agenda. Then what do you think needs to be done for data that is being collected to become visible, aggregated, so that it can be used to build better solutions?
Thank you. That's a tall order. But I know that, for example, the government has its own data. There's the official data that comes from line ministries. There's the data that is through the Bureau of Statistics that is collected through various surveys and so on. But there is also a lot of data that is, collected by civil society organizations. There are private companies like tech companies or like mobile companies, like also Vodacom, for example, which can bring to bear big data, that can show, amazing trends. For example, we were hoping to see how micro and small and medium enterprises have been impacted by COVID-19 through their patterns of expenditure and transactions, in M-Pesa. We could not do that because I think the regulations are the regulatory framework is yet to catch up with that. So we could not do that, but you can actually harness big data to be able to solve certain challenges. Looking at the NGO and civil society community, there are those organizations that are on the ground who, in order to deliver their services, they actually do action research. They produce excellent data. I remember in the 80s, you're asking how old I am. Yeah, and the early 90s, we were applying the rapid rural, RRI, rapid rural research, applied research with communities. And that is very rich data because it provides trends, on what has happened in those communities over the past 10 years. It identifies, indigenous solutions. It identifies, challenges. And all of that is used to inform projects on the ground, but the local authorities probably never have access to that data in order to determine how they plan they do their local plan. And, the results never get to the policymakers. And I remember in 2003, 2004, we came here to Tanzania as UNDP to work with the government and TGNP in promoting social accountability, social accountability approaches through public expenditure tracking, citizens report cards. All that data that comes out of that needs to find its way to the national, like the 5-year development plan monitoring and evaluation framework. And the question is, how do you harvest all that data to inform policy decisions, budget allocations? You need, a system that brings the NGO community together, collaborate with private sector who usually have access to big data, and see how you transform that data into analytical work that then is used to produce knowledge that can be used even for studies, but also for policy making, and then convert that to messages and to applicability. And I think I was just thinking that with the Funguo program, you know, we would be very willing to work with the NGO community to find a solution for that, because you have so much rich data which is not harnessed and not utilized. And I think we also need to see how we ensure, I know that the FYDP3 has that element of social accountability that is being incorporated into the monitoring and evaluation framework, but how do we ensure that we are ready to take advantage of that? I remember in Ethiopia when we still had this poverty reduction strategy papers, as I was sharing with you, we worked with the NGO community to actually create an organization, a network that was able to harness such data, and it got, that network had a seat at the table at the national level. But it requires a lot of thinking, and we are very willing to walk that journey with you in Funguo, using all the applications. You know, I'm not yet tech savvy, but because I'm a little bit ancient, but using all the, you know, the skills and the energy and the passion you have to see that the voices of citizens on the ground, of communities, reach policymakers, and vice versa. For example, does, I don't always want to talk about Mama Mboga, because that's not just who we are more than Mama Mboga. Does Mama Mboga know that Tanzania wants to become a middle-income country by 2025, and what does that mean for her? And then does Kwelile know this? You know, she's a young woman that is so passionate about, you know, moving forward and transforming the country, but does she see her space there? And the question is, how do we pull all this together into a coherent process and platform that digests and then produces some fruit that we can all eat and enjoy and grow well? I don't know if that makes sense. Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Musisi. One of the things that came out of there is, Ash, I hope your team is writing that down. Funguo is, you know, more than willing to sit on the table to figure out how to create this platform and this network. Yamani makofi mabina mabwana kama mimi hivyo vitu they really excite me. Just on that same note, with regards to how we make sure that data, because the data that's collected, Ms. Musisi, you said, how does Mama Mboga or Ikolile, how do we make sure that their voices are heard as well, right? Because they have a nuance, they have a context, and most of the data that we are harvesting on ground, it has a voice. It's just that it's not seen probably at, you know, on the international level. We have a lot of civil society is funded by, not a lot, all. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, can attack me here. Is funded by international development agencies. And we have development agencies who are funding and making decisions based on data they find on www. Right? And unfortunately, when you go on Google or the World Wide Web to look for information that can inform your decisions about Africa, Tanzania, Kinondoni, most of the data that's there is not necessarily generated by the people, our people themselves, right? It's not nuanced, it lacks context. And so we have a lot of projects that are starting up, we have a lot of programs that are starting up that are built off of data that is not necessarily nuanced to what's happening on ground. And hence, Nelson, I think we had this conversation with you. We've had a lot of projects in the gender space. We've had a lot of projects tackling sexual reproductive health education, sexual reproductive health rights over the years. Some of them have started and withered out. with all the interventions that have been done, we still see a challenge. It's kind of like you are taking 3 steps forward and then you take a few back. Because numbers don't lie. Data comes back and tells you, oh, there's still a problem here. I do know Rebecca Gume is in the room and she's probably, she probably has an intervention here as well. What can we do to make sure that we're leveraging on the digital space to do exactly what Ms. Musisi has been has pointed to make sure that people on ground can also engage in providing us the information, or the civil society the information that they need to now create the solutions. And when I'm talking about civil society, I'm talking about a local level, but also at international level, right? Because right now, the research data that we go for, we're using the digital space to inform decisions. However, that is catalyzed, the trigger is the NGO. Is there any way that we can help the person on ground, Ikwalile, Mamamboga, actually become the trigger for us to receive the data that informs decisions? Does that question make sense? Yeah, it's a loaded question. Yes. But how do we involve and bring the masses to the table?
Thank you again, Kalila. I think that's a very good question. I don't know if I'm not here to provide answers. I'm here to say my opinion. So I think first of all is an issue of accessibility or media of how do we really communicate with them. So, and then this starts from the purpose, from the data collection, like the purpose. Like we are thinking of them, but are we thinking, how do they actually, how are they getting involved in this process? But probably we are thinking of them too late. Maybe we are not thinking with them from the start. We're talking about human-centered designing everything here. But again, I talked about the media. These what we say Mamamboga are using feature phones, for example, to do everything. How easy is that for somebody who is not in that space, who has not been using those feature phones to actually think of them or to be in their shoes, to have that empathy, to make sure that when I'm doing anything in that space or to get them involved, I actually be in their shoes. So I think there is a problem of correct channels or right channels to reach them. I'll give this example. Mtwara, there's this what's called cashew nuts, right? There's a cashew nut. I think this is a strategic crop in Tanzania, and a lot of people there are doing. That's what they depend. They rely on that for their economic growth and everything, right? But they do everything in a very as usual manner. Like this is how we've been doing it. Now you see a lot of people who have information sitting in the towns. They know like we should probably maybe the tools they're using right now are not supposed to be used right now. We need to update them. But you see that information is not reaching them. Right? So it's about the media. How do they communicate with them? Have they made sure, first of all, have they had a conversation with them and say, you know what, we need to provide this solution for you so that your voices can be heard, so that we can update you on what are the better ways to do things, and then come back, find solutions, and use the correct media again to give feedback. So I think it's there. That's the challenges. Yeah.
So the right media and thinking about them from the very beginning, and not approaching it exactly as was said earlier, not approaching approaching it as we're dealing with people. We're people dealing with people. How do we make sure that they're fully engaged from the very beginning? Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring a close to the panel in the next few minutes. Could I please invite questions from the floor, comments, and so forth? Does anybody have a question to the panel? Yes, we have a question right here and one right there. So, this is. Do you have another one there?
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity, and I would like to recognize the presence of our Honorable Sir. Thank you so much. Thank you, the panelists, and everybody in the room this morning. I really enjoyed, and I was very interested hearing on the usage of data. My name is Faith Pella. I'm actually coming from Tigo. I'm heading Tigo Pesa business. And one of the categories of the corporate and the partnerships is NGOs. We work very close with NGOs, especially on the disbursement of funds and the usage of available data from the telco side to making sure that we are utilizing that data for the benefit of the beneficiaries, the NGOs, and all the activities that are actually in line to that. My question on data, I happen to work with one huge NGO, let me just mention WFP, and we've really been trying to see how we can use the telco, the mobile money, and any data that's already available with the telco. But we had to go through National Bureau of Statistics for approval. We had to go through to CRA for approval. We had to go to BOT for approval. And it's been a year now, a year plus, and we're still in the process of getting approvals and approvals and approvals. Another thing I've noted is that in sorry, I didn't get that.
So she's asking that you...
approval for what? Okay. Approval was actually for the usage of this data, already available data in the network. Because we collect a lot of data. We call information like number of calls you make. The information like where do you make these calls from? If it's a person who moved from one location to another, we kind of, that information is informing us about something. Maybe it's a business person, or it's a person who travels a lot. So the location that you make calls, the way we capture from different towers, kind of inform us of something. In mobile money services, how many times do you buy airtime? How many times do you transact? How many times do you, there's a lot of data that's available that can inform us to make sure that we are really getting ourselves into the digital economy. But the usage of this data is so restricted. We have our data protection policy that needs to really be followed. TCRA is always on the neck, BOT is always on the neck, and all that. Yeah, so, and another thing that we have noted, data is available, but it's available in silos. A lot of data is on paperwork, especially when you go down to the local government levels. Some data is already digitized, it's in different formats, and it's still in silos. Even to us as a network, data is available internally, but it's also available in silos. That integration is actually required. So as much as we are so much interested into going into data, I think the new technologies can really support that, but we need to open up from the government levels to development partners, and actually to individuals. It's something that was mentioned earlier on the transformation side. The transformation, we can't really separate digital from the transformation, because that transformation is actually triggered by new technologies. That means that we're in the digital age. So I know I've said so much on data, but we have all these kind of restrictions or roadblocks that are really not helping us to move to the next level and actually moving into that full transformation. So there are a lot of things to be considered from the development partners. I believe you can do a lot. I've had different experiences in Africa, especially in building data. I happened to be in one of the projects in the northern Nigeria where we were trying to collect data for farmers, but the biggest role was played by the NGOs and the support from the government, and actually not just the top, the local government actually played a very bigger role in supporting that project to make sure that we collect data. And we were able to collect the data of almost 17 million farmers. And we were able to verify like 3 to 7 million farmers that we could say that I understand Ms. Faith Pella is a farmer, is a rice farmer, his farm is this size, this is the capacity that it could produce in a year, and things like that. So I think as we are speaking data, we also have to look at how we can make sure that we synchronize or we integrate this data to make sure that they can be usable for by different sectors and different institutions.
Absolutely. Yamani, a hand of applause for that comment. I think that just adds to what we're talking about the aggregation of data, and adds to what Ms. Musisi was talking about with Funguo willing to play a part in ensuring that this is actually happening.
Good morning. So, for me, it's not a question.
For the good of those who are joining in online or who might watch the video later, may I please come and bring you this mic?
So for me, it's not a question, it's a comment. I should also say I feel very unfortunate that Semkai was not able to be present in the panel, because I think as we are launching this very important report, having a representative from the NGO sector would add a very big part of input in the panel. But still, I think we can continue to discuss. I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Rebecca Gyumi. I am the Executive Director at Msichana Initiative Organization. I have very few comments. One, I think, apart from the very beautiful inputs that the panelists were able to contribute, I think there is a big issue around context that I felt like it was missing, especially when we are looking at the role of NGO and CSO and how they can actually leverage technologies or, be in the digital spaces to be able to transform or create impact in our community. And I think with this, I would like to contribute that there is already bits and pieces of, initiatives that are already happening in the ecosystem of CSO in Tanzania. And I believe in understanding context, we'll probably be in a better position to understand what is currently happening, where are the gaps, but also how to engage going forward. Although I'm also maybe sure, once Dada Asha is here, through the report we'll be able to understand a little bit about it. Because we have a couple of ongoing initiative. For instance, I'll give an example of a crowd mapping initiative that is currently happening, that is mapping communities with female genital mutilation, where a community can, on time, call in, whenever there is incidents of female genital mutilation or a girl being married off, and get assistance immediately, on spot. And I think it's important to understand, although there are a number of challenges, there are such, initiatives that are currently happening. I'm also aware, even with my friend here, they are coordinating the National Child Helpline in Tanzania that receives direct calls from communities and children whenever there are violence that are happening to children in our country. And I think it's worth noting such initiatives that, there is already things happening in the NGO space, and how can we leverage this, but also how can we learn from the limitations that, such initiatives are encountering at the moment, so we can, innovate going forward. There is also, I'm just giving it as an example, the last one. There was also Sauti za Wananchi from Twaweza, and I've seen Dadarisha there, which I think is an example of how NGO, for instance, in Tanzania, have been innovating around the use of digital mechanisms. But we will not do justice if we will not be able to talk about, the political landscape, the social landscape that sometimes act as a hindrance when it comes to, the use of such technologies and innovation. So as NGO, as much as we know there is interest, there is appetite, we would like to know more how to engage, with all these technologies and innovation, etc. But how can we ground ourselves into the context and what is currently happening, but also what is possible to be done, and how can we look at the gaps that hinder the full and effective use of the technologies that we have at the moment. And the last one, I think, is to also say, maybe Dadasha will speak later. I think with the NGO, and this is what I think one also mentioned in the panel, sometimes when we talk about digital technologies, when we talk about innovation, I don't know why we always tend to think of apps and, all these things, But I think NGO have been innovating around different social problems that we have in our communities. So how can we also learn to, maybe emulate on the best practices while learn on the gaps that they're facing at the moment, and inspire others to learn from them and maybe scale from where they are at the moment. Look at the idea of innovation from the perspective of really bringing impact and transforming around, the social issues that we are facing at the moment. I think that conversation also we need to speak about it a little bit. Asante sana.
Asante sana, Rebecca. Actually, I'd just like to mention that you're actually speaking to something that has been mentioned by the panel. So what we were talking about, and some things that I heard, was that data is available because people are doing things. There is work that has been done. The question is that data visible? And then also, is that data aggregated? Can we have all the data that's collected across the different data points be used to drive an agenda, a collective agenda? Because right now we have scattered points of data. And then also with regards to that there was work that is being done, there's acknowledgement that there is work that is being done. There's also acknowledgement that there is a lot of capacity that needs to be built to ensure relevance, because the world is changing and changing fast. So then how do we build the capacity to make sure that we are fueling the work that is already underway, and not sitting on the side because wanafanya, tunacho wanafanya. Lakini how do we catalyze or allow ourselves to leapfrog? Kamala, you had a question, but before I bring you through, I am just going to read a comment that was sent in by Semkai. Rebecca, asante sana kwa kunikumbusha. So Semkai Kilonzo, ED at Policy Forum, was unable to make it, like Asha pointed out in the very beginning, but he did share some words that, if you permit me, I am going to read out. Now, considering I'm holding the mic, I take that as permission. So this is Semkai, and I'm going to read word to word. He wanted to speak about cloud-based management systems, shaping processes, shaping people. Policy Forum Secretariat has always been looking for ways to improve the working environment as we thrive to achieve impact in the policy domain. One thing we are extremely proud of that has improved the effectiveness of our team is our Management Information System, MSI, a cloud-based platform for executing programmatic and governance decisions. It has made us a much more agile office and changed the way we interact with management processes within the network. The system helps us vividly see the interconnectedness of all our interventions. It is generating so much data such that we feel spoiled for choice with a multitude of stories to tell, and it has opened our horizon on the possibilities of technological exploration and exploitation. More notable for 2019 was Policy Forum being remotely audited without the external audit firm having to spend time at the office. The read-only access to MSI provided them with all the information they needed. Only time they came to the office for physical verification of assets. That was the only time they came to the office. This new non-conventional way of being audited helped save time and resources and is very transparent, helping us improve our reputation for integrity to our peers and partners. In the long run, we hope this will encourage other NGOs to leap forward with us to become truly 21st century Tanzania civil society entities. We believe that technology will give us an edge to maintain our relevance as we thrive for sustainability in years to come. Jamani, tumpatie makofi yake huko kwa alipo. I feel. Thank you so much, Simkai, for sharing that as well. I love how you talked about the interconnectedness of all the data that you're collecting and how that now is informing decisions that you're making. Spoiled for choice. Kamala, karibu. Nadhani baada ya Kamala kuzungumza, kama mtaniruhusu, I'll invite you to give your final remarks and we will close the panel. Wait, hold, thank you. Sorry, Kamala.
Thank you so much. So I want to speak on a few issues. One is on planning versus with investment in technology. For example, we have seen it takes 10 years for the nation to do this what we call sensa ya maendeleo ya makazi na watu. And then you ask yourself the question, when the government is allocating the resources for development in the community, where do actually get the real data within the community? Because it takes 10 years to have the second or the following census. So to me, for example, if we go to the village where we grown up, you will always see young people, they are trying to do a lot of activities. But then, where are the infrastructures that can support them to achieve or to engage in what we call a digital ecosystem? For example, today, in some of the areas where they are doing a lot of activities, for example, agriculture and other, you find that there is no, in some of the places there is no electricity, some of the places there is no internet, some of the places there is no, but all of these are the Tanzanian, and I think they need, or they are in need to have the platform where they can show that we are doing agriculture, we are doing farming, and we are doing a lot of other innovation issues around our community. So my question was actually targeted to Mr. The Minister. Like, what are the actually, what are the government mechanisms that they are intending to put? Because I remember at the time of COVID, it was like when the students were allowed to go back and wait the time to come back to school. In my entire community, I found some of the students didn't go back to school because the time they spent at home, there were no actually any progressive attachment with their school curriculums. Most of them, they were in the farms and taking care of the kettles and agriculture. And at Rusty, when they called them back to the education, to the school, they were no longer interested to engage again in the education system. So, and I saw in town there were connection with WhatsApp and everything, and some they were learning through online. But in the villages, there were no that opportunities. But all of this, they are Tanzanians, and they are paying taxi, and they need to have the equal opportunities to receive or to be or to utilize the digital system. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamala. Jamani, tumpigie makofi kwa kuuliza swali and the daring to hope that I lose my job by asking the guest of honor question. But thank you so much for that question. And perhaps may I suggest that we could take that. There were a lot of components in that comment, stroke question, stroke keynote, that we could take that comment on the side. Mheshimiwa mgeni rasmi, pia kama ungependa kuizungumzia kwenye presentation yako hapo baadaye. Could I please invite all the panelists to probably close, and you can close and touch on some of the interventions that have been shared by our interveners this morning, and give us your final word for the day. We shall start with Diana Nancy.
If it's about ladies first, may fun like every time. Thank you.
It's an army fast.
An army fast. No, thank you. And for all the questions, I represent the NGO community, Rebecca, and for some of the things that we've managed to do, we still also face challenges. Like right now, part of our strategy with DOT is to push for digital inclusion, for digital jobs and digital businesses. And yet, we cannot sit and assume that these youth, while they transition their businesses to be online, that all is rosy, because there's still challenges that they have to go through. All the processes, the regulations, and I cannot speak about this because I'm sure the minister has had about how to conduce the environment in all the different forums that he's been attending. Yes, NGOs have done quite a bit, but we also still struggle in some areas, and I think it really requires an ecosystem lens to look at where and what people fit into what, to make sure we bring this close home. Otherwise, the NGOs can't do it alone, the government cannot do it alone, the development partners cannot do it alone. So a mindset of collaboration, because with complex challenges, it requires smart partnerships. And this is what we should be, I think, pushing for me at the end of the day. And then as a final thought, while she was mentioning around how other countries have done it, the representative from Tigo, and the different stakeholders, I do feel that also digital transformation is about transformative leadership and the will. So if you're a head of an organization or an institution, you have to have the will to say yes, because innovation technology is about saying yes all the time. It's risky, but it's about saying yes and learning and providing aggressive pest solutions. And so even when it comes to regulations, it's about saying yes, let's give it a try and see where it leads us. Let's learn from it, let's pivot, let's grow. And as a final remark, I do hope we all find a digital footing that is transformative to our communities. Thank you.
Good luck. Following. Yeah, I think no, I'm not going to try to. Anyway, so overall, I think the conversation has been really good and engaging. But I want to leave here. I want to get this out on what I think we can do better in terms of creating relevance. We've been talking about relevance in the data we collect. How do we make sure they're up to date? Because as you said, there are a lot of data collected years ago and they're stagnant, and a lot of people are consuming those data and they're actually misleading them. But think of the likes of Google. Google are not collecting, are not creating data, right? Google built a tool. Everybody's searching Google now, but Google just built a tool for anybody to create content, for anybody to consume content. They're just sitting back and relax. What they do is creating mechanisms on how can we make sure there are no violences or maybe on any cyber challenges we're facing. That's what they're focusing on. Recently, I'm happy to say, recently we've partnered with HDIF to create an innovation ecosystem map for Tanzania, right? So the reason I'll put my neck out here and say it's going to be very successful is because of that model. Yes, probably OpenStreetMap have contributed a lot in initial collection of initial data, but the focus was empowering the mappers, any individual, to create content, right, to map. And probably for now, their role is about approving data. But then how do we keep those data relevant? How do we keep those data up to date? It's again by empowering the people. Like they created a tool for the people to map instead of trying to do everything themselves and maintain that, because I think that's what Google succeeded in. And I don't know if they copied the model of Google, but I think it's going to work. So,
Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you. I think my message is congratulations that we have reached this far. And there's a lot of good work that is being done, and for me today has been a learning experience. And I think what I'm getting here is that for NGOs, the digitization is very important for innovative solutions, as well as your own internal systems for efficiency, for effectiveness, and also transparency. Because especially, I talked about the various roles of civil society. There's one of the watchdog, because civil society want to be a watchdog for government, but if you yourself are not accountable and transparent, then whom are you talking to? So this can really help us. I think the experience from the policy forum is something that we can really take forward to build capacity of organizations to reach that level of effectiveness. And going back to what Diana was saying, even though you are operating non-governmental organizations and institutions, the current context requires an entrepreneurial mindset. The development partner space, development partners are not looking for projects to fund. They're looking for partnerships. Gone are the days when there's a big pot of money, available to dish out to NGOs. We're looking for common solutions. Well, even me, I'm not a donor. UNDP is not a donor. We are a UN organization that also receives funds from development partners, but they no longer want to be called donors. So smart partnership, strategic collaboration is very important, and bringing value to this space, so that even the services you provide can be sustained through contributions of local government, if they see value, central government, and other partners. Lastly, the big takeaway for me is the need to synchronize, all the data, the analytics, visualization, messaging, in order to inform our work, collective voice, and policy. That is a big takeaway that we want to take as funguo And Funguo is not just UNDP, it's a partnership with the innovation ecosystem and government and development partners. On the issue of the big data, our Honorable Minister is here, and we look forward to hearing from him on that. And then Google, ladies and gentlemen, they decide these days what data they put in there, well, they accept and what data they don't accept. And I believe, as you know, in Africa we need to, or even Tanzania, we need to create our own, platforms that bring the extent of relevance that we need. And so we really need to do that. We use, yes, all of those global platforms, but they are through their own lens. So what are the platforms that will accept the entire spectrum of our lens as Tanzania and as Africa?
Thank you so much, Ms. Msisi. Mike, Karim.
Thank you. Well, I think as an entrepreneur, I've seen a lot of business here today with what was mentioned, and there's so many businesses here. One, I think this conversation needs to be something that we do frequently. Since technology is changing, so which means we have new interventions every now and then that can solve our problems much more faster. That is one. But two, I think it's also a collaborative approach. We can't do it on our own. As I said, with my diagram, I think we have 4 partners here. We have development partners or partnerships. We have government. We have CSO themselves. And we also have citizens here. So how are we all transforming together? And yes, private sector, of course. You know. So how are we transforming together as one? Because whatever intervention you're going to make, these are the 4 stakeholders you're going to meet at any particular time. And are we speaking the same language? I mean, I know private sector doesn't speak development partners language. Neither it doesn't speak government language. And I can tell you some of the things might look very complex, but to my friend here from IPF, these are things that can be solved technologically very fast in terms of how do we make a common data collection tool that we can all use to collect data, because that's how we can aggregate that data in the first place. How are we issuing common softwares for cloud? Semkai has talked about that we could all adapt. So you buy once, make once, and then you buy everybody, instead of everybody procuring his own application. So there's so many things, as I said, as an entrepreneur, that there's business here to be supported that can then support the CS so that their partners can benefit out of it. So one, it's a collaborative effort. Maybe what this report could be a stepping stone is to then take this conversation forward, and then this becomes an annual conference where we discuss all the challenges we have had, share our learnings, like Rebecca said, about what everybody's doing, what are the challenges, so we could all learn and not repeat the same mistakes again. So, and lastly, again, technology is just a tool. It is not the solution. And it can never be the solution. But how are we using technology to then reach to our solutions? I think every time we have a problem, we put an app. Every time we have a problem, we put a website. And I think you throw an app at every problem that we have, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So how are we using technology as a tool, and for us to solve our problems? And lastly, this is just for me, how are we? So we are doing capacity building. This word is everywhere. But my problem is how we have capacity. Okay, we are doing capacity building because we are showing people have capability but lack capacity. But then how are we capacitating the right people? Because most of the time we are doing capacity building for people who are incapable. So then, after capacity building, there's no change that is happening. So how are we changing this? So capacity building, capacitating capable people who can then take these things forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. A hand of applause to this incredible panel, as well as everybody who shared a comment today. Makofi yenu yalikuwa ni ya kichoyo sana. Naomba tena tufanye seriously nikaze kuzungumza kwa lisali zima. Could I please ask you to take your seats? Hapo ndo unaitwa kiti moto. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. Technology as a tool, technology not as the end. It's a means to an end. We have talked about leadership, being challenged by it, building the conducive environment to aggregate and synchronize data, thinking with the end user in mind, and not thinking to build for the user, but involving the user in the building. It's been an incredibly engaging discussion. Thank you very much to the incredible panel. We shall move forward swiftly, and I think sasa hivi we're moving to something that we have all been waiting for, and what brought us here. I believe the panel sets an incredible stage for it. I am going to invite our host for the day, and this is none other but Ms. Asha Abinala, to now come and share the report findings and also answer a few questions about the report. Lakini sasa, this is setting the stage for what Mike challenged us to do, Asha, and make this an annual gathering to build onto the report that you shall present. Jamani, ladies and gentlemen, a hand of applause for Asha Abinala. Frank. As Asha is preparing herself, I am welcoming a comment, and the comment is, or probably, could you allow me to ask swali moja la kizushi as you're preparing? So as we're talking about the digital space, yesterday I happened to be moderating a panel within the Gender Equality Forum, and one of the things that we were addressing was how the science, research and development work that is being done right now to inform the COVID-19 responses is heavily gender biased, and how several several feminists in the civil society space are not informed about the research that's out there, not necessarily because they don't want to be informed, but because most of the research is not visible. And some of the things we were talking about is how some of the side effects of the vaccines that are being used right now are heavily creating complications for females. Why? Because most of the tests were done by men on men. And hence, we have a challenge. We have a challenge because it's not, and let me just say, it's not because it was intentional, kwamba remove the women, but because it was a fast response. We needed to do something. But whatever happened was most of those on the decision-making platforms, you'd find that we have a lot of females in the front line, but sitting in decision-making spaces ni wachache, right? And then you find that most of the people who are administering the medication are females, but those on the decision-making spaces on how that R&D is conducted are not. So there are things that are not necessarily done on purpose. However, there are things that we need to be informed about so that we can speak about them. And I'm going to, with that, it's just something to think about. there are reports that are going to be presented next week. We're talking about how to use digital space to make sure not just the global north is part of the conversation, but how do we make this relevant for the global south as well. Asha, asante sana, karibu sana. I think nimekupa bafa.
So exciting discussion. Strategically kabisa, we thought that it would be very interesting to get to hear wonderful and different insights from a variety of experts before we go into the report. So yeah, an overview, it's a mouthful, an overview of the digital ecosystem, emerging and applied technologies on NGOs in Tanzania. So yeah, why the report? Well, the first reason is that the CSO and NGO community are a very good, very good and potential clients. Yeah, we have seen and realized that there are ways we can partner in terms of what they offer and what we offer. And in that case, and that is why we saw the panel itself was a representation of how people need to be, how we all need to collaborate so as to go through the digital transformation. So we were inspired by the gaps that we found or saw or observed in a way. But then again, when you tend to observe gaps, when you're talking about observing gaps in the digital ecosystem without really showing what you're seeing, you sort of cannot validate whatever you want to share or say, and we thought that it is important we do a study and come up with the results and share the recommendations, share the findings, and also to spike a conversation on the matter. So the report itself looks like this. That is the content, the report content. I'm just passing you through, maybe to create an interest, if at all you would be interested to get to read the whole report. But it has a variety of sections depending on content and specifications, and that is how it goes. The presentation, we have just taken part of the report, just given a very few interesting areas with hope that we can't really go through the whole report. We've really skipped a lot of content. The criteria for selection. So before I list down the criteria, I would like to say that one of the other criteria we have is that in the community we realize that we have like 4 criteria of NGOs that operate on this space. We have those who are very well established, and those who are very well established, a lot of them belong to NGOs which have been there for a longer time. They are more credible, they have more funds, they have more resources. We have the second specification, which was those who have been established for long, but not really serious, or maybe not serious. They've not operated in the space maybe consistently for a long time, depending on factors and varieties. They may be internally or externally. The other type of NGOs that we realized was those which were established but not really operating. So you know the name is there, but when you go inside and look at when you go on the field, you realize that it is not working. But then again, we decided to aim and go for the first criteria, which was NGOs which were very well established, They have all the criteria which makes them operate in a manner which they would wish to. So from those NGOs, this is the criteria of selection we did. First, we looked at the impact and influence to the community of that NGO. The second was the quantity of their internal content. We've been talking about data here the whole morning. So data sort of fits in section B of the content. We also, the other criteria was online visibility, like how visible are they? Is the online visibility in conjunction with the type or the type of content they have, the type of programs they have, the type of work they showcase? And the other thing was a geographical factor. All the NGOs, so we realized that most of these giant NGOs are based in Dar es Salaam, because somehow it has also been realized that most of the development partner money is injected to NGOs which are based in here. It seems they're doing a wonderful job, and they have sort of big roots to operate in regional areas as well. So the other criteria was pre-calculative dimensional vulnerabilities from digitally identified risks. So we have a lot of NGOs which are embracing digital, but then again, what does it mean by embracing this digital? Are they really looking into it? Do they understand the vulnerabilities they are facing? Are they exposed and they are yet to know? That is all, that is what it means in the criteria for that selection. So the research methodology. So the first attempt was reaching out to people who are in the NGO space. Some of them are in the room, some of them are not, like really wanting to understand and know what they think about the study, if at all it is very interesting, if at all it is needed, because sometimes you're not maybe in the NGO world and you think that this is supposed to be done, but then again you find that the NGO community might not really want whatever you want to share as a study. So we did some one-on-one, before proper research, one-on-one, and it seemed very interesting. We did talk about what was being discussed in the morning. And after that, we did a lot of interviews in form of focus group discussion. So fortunately, in most organizations that we went to do interviews, through our questionnaire which we had devised, some of them would call the whole department. So you sit with the whole department and discuss it. So it was very, very, it was a learning process and very interesting to get to know what was happening in the community. So it was both qualitative and quantitative. I've put here, this is not in the report. I think somehow we'll have to insert it. But we wanted to, we really wanted to have 25 big NGOs. And we succeeded in getting 20 of them. And so the score mark of the questionnaire of what we were looking at, of all the sections, the questionnaire had 5 sections, A, B, C, D. Yeah, it had 4 sections. So the questionnaire had 4 sections, and of all the sections, we had a score mark of 35. We were looking at a general perspective of the NGO. We really didn't go internally very much, so we're looking at the basics in those sections. And the report explains, when you go to the report, it explains those sections and the findings. But the score, in the score mark of 35, so an NGO which had all the criteria and was doing very well, it was supposed to have a mark of 35. And so from 1 to 20, we had one NGO which had a mark of 32. And in this one NGO which had a mark of 32, of 8 policies and guidelines which we had listed to know if they had them internally, we found they had one extra one. It was very impressive. So they had a score of 32, but then again, you find that the second NGO after 32 is 16, then 15, 14, 14, and to the NGO which has a mark of 2. So before even going into the findings and everything, from this one you could quickly get a glimpse that a lot of initiatives are being done when it comes to digital adoption, but not really fully, only in some of the areas. So the overall objective, one of the objectives has been met today. We really want conversations on the matter, and it has been a really interesting conversation. I have learned a lot, and we promise we're going to be documenting this conversation, and we're going to be sending a report of whatever has been discussed today, whatever has transpired, at least for follow-up and monitoring. So that is one of the objectives. But the overall objective also is to make sure that we have an integration of different partners to work together. So as Media Convergency, we are an ICT company, and we are for profit. But you will find that in some of the lessons learned, when you talk about a company and you talk about NGO, they don't really fit in one line. It's like they have a different agenda. So we are trying to maybe play part. We know that these conversations are there. So we're just playing part and adding on to the effort of making sure that we can speak on the same language by a variety of partners with the goal of transforming and going digital, like digital adoption for the whole community. But in case of this report, we focused on the NGO. So part A was organizational digitization. That is what we were looking at. And part A is the one which has a lot of findings. We have not put all of them. We've just put a few. And one of them is digital policies and guidelines. I did touch on when I started earlier that when you talk about, okay, you're adapting to technology, but are you also adapting in ways which you are protecting yourself so that you are not vulnerable or lose very important and significant content and data. So from the digital policies and guidelines, 45% of organizations had only 2 policies and guidelines. In the report, you will find a list of policies we shared. There were 8 policies, and we've explained in the report what each policy does and why it is important. So only 45% had 2 policies from the list. 25% had organizations, only had 1 policy. 20% of the organizations did not have any policy or guideline. 5% had 3 of the 8 policies. And 5% again had all the listed policies and guidelines. So only 5% from 100% had all the listed guidelines. We are talking about a number of 20 NGOs, so that means that it is only 1 organization which we found with such. Other organizations were doing better, but you find that there are only 3, only 2, and the others didn't have it at all. I would really like to stress on swala la policy na guidelines when it comes to digital usage. I would like to stress that there are some organizations, NGOs, which have shared their logins, what do you call, they have outsourced some of sensitive information and platforms to an outsider without any guidelines on how they can get it back, without any guidelines of information. So while we're talking about policies, I would really implore that people get to read those policies and get to see what they're missing and what they could really apply to the organizations. The organizational digitization also we are using, we are talking about the use of organizational emails, and Mike did talk about that. So we think that communicating through email, it's just only a matter of sending information from one person to another, whether it goes with a Gmail, Yahoo, or an organizational email. Some NGOs tend to overlook that, but we should take note that I would say a lot of people agree with me that the NGO work with a lot of content. They have a lot of sensitive content, they have a lot of connections, and they have a lot of information. So when you don't have a good monitoring system of how this information is shared, and if at all any employee can own personal email for communication and for communication, that means that once that employee leaves the organization, they have information which they're not supposed to have there. So it's not really that complicated, but then again, maybe because without not knowing what the challenge or the risk and stuff, that is why maybe it is happening. And you would see that only 65% of organizations strictly use official emails. Like only 65 use strictly like they're not allowed to use their personal email addresses. While the 35%, they can use it. It is okay to use your personal email. You can mix whether you want an organizational one or you want yourself, it is allowed. So it is very risky for an NGO which is very big to allow to allow a person to use their individual emails as a norm, unless otherwise it is urgent, and that's why we need guidelines and policies. And just to stress I'm not sure, I'm sorry if I remember the number correctly. From the NGOs we had, the smallest number of employees were 18, and the highest number of employees were 38. So they are that big of an organization. We are still at part A. So storage of sensitive information and data. We were talking about data here. But 85% of organizations embrace both dual approach of online and offline. So talking about saving data, that is a question which we need to ask ourselves as leaders in our organizations. How do we want to save our data and why? Why do we want to save it online? Why do we want to save it offline? Of course, as an outsider, I would recommend that it is not advisable to share and save your content offline. So 85% of organizations embrace both saving offline and online. 10% of organizations explicitly store all their sensitive information and data online, like no offline. It is not allowed at all. Strictly against it, and 5% of the organization explicitly hold all sensitive information and data offline. In actual fact, in most cases you find a lot of 5%, almost not having any digital aspect. They'll only have one. So this organization also has social media platforms, but they are not active. They're a very big organization. But the other thing which is very interesting, the only digital aspect they have is the finance system. And that is because development partners do not allow not having a software when it comes to finance. And somehow that also drives in a point of how this journey is sort of cooperative and complementary, that every single partner has a way in which they could drive the agenda of transforming and making sure that we adapt in a way which is flexible and friendlier. So this is part B. In part A, we've just done of them, but there are more in part A. Part A has a lot of findings. In part B, this is digital visibility and vulnerability and social outlets here. So 35 of organization has a dedicated personnel for visibility, but not a department. So there is a difference. You have an organization which is very active, maybe online, and they have a dedicated person, and that is 35%. So you have an organization that has a dedicated department for digital visibility and branding, that is 25%. We have an organization that has made it part of the department. Like they have a department that they also segment part of the visibility, and that is 25%. And we have organizations that did not have any personnel dedicated to any visibility and branding. Like anybody who feels like tweeting that day, they can tweet. So you don't know how many people, or maybe whatever platform, so you don't know how many people has access to the platform. Anybody can be allowed to log in and share content. It also implies that there is no guidelines there is no guidelines when it comes to sharing content, and that is very, very risky. We've seen examples of big NGOs sharing content, somebody sharing content internally, and then they delete it, but the repercussion is done. That is because of not having guidelines. So it might seem like it's really easy and simple, but we have different ways of thinking, and not every time when something wrong is done, it's done by a person who did it intentionally. Sometimes it's because we have different ways of thinking. So to make sure that we have the same way of thinking when it comes to something representing the organization, you have to have a guideline. So, yeah, and 5% did not have any personnel dedicated to digital visibility and branding. Talking about protocols of digital security.
So security is very, very key. And sometimes we think that security, we have just to make sure that content is fine at the office. But then again, you have an employee who works at a very sensitive position. What do? Do they work with their mobile device, or have you given them their mobile device? Are they allowed to download sensitive documents on their mobile phones, or are they not allowed to download sensitive documents? Do they go with their phone when they're on leave, or do they not go with their phone on their leave? So such are the things you look at, especially when we deal with very sensitive information. Organizations that deal with advocacy and advocacy, especially which deals with advocacy and content, which is very sensitive. So 50 organizations have adopted digital security protocols, which is very, very good. So most of these who have adopted in the 50%, though it comes with a program which they do internally. So there are different programs which are done internally, and some programs tend to prompt or push the organization to embrace the digital aspect because it is advised then. So it also works very positively by working in these programs which bring the digital aspects. Some of them it really helps some of them to move forward, because as it comes in, then they embrace the digital going forward. So 35% of the organizations have partially applied digital security protocols, and 15% of the organizations do not have any digital security protocols. So and that is why. So when it comes to the NGO world, you cannot solve the problem or adapt in the same way. Everybody, every organization is very unique. You need to understand your organization to be able to understand what you can adapt to. And it is very good to understand your organization before even embracing digital. You want to know what you want. Well, you need to identify what you want, or you need to have somebody who can really help make sure that you identify what you want. Yes, you want to go digital. Yes, we need to adapt, but we have to make sure we are adapting to the right things. There are a lot of technologies out there. There's a lot of solutions. So yeah, something like that. So this is section D. We call it digitization and copyright. In digitization and copyright is, especially when it comes to programs which are very maybe sensitive or do at a very huge scale. For instance, I'm not so sure if Sema, Kia is not around. So, sorry. So I'm not so sure. For instance, Sema is doing wonderfully when it comes to programs that deals with children, and there are certain programs which are unique to themselves. So normally, as much as we are saying that it is good that such information is public, sometimes for an NGO it is good to secure a program to make sure that it is what do we call it, copyrighted. It is good to know what to copyright and what not to copyright, to make sure that you secure an initiative. Sometimes a very good initiative gets lost just because it wasn't copyrighted, and somebody with maybe more muscles or maybe more means or ways would start the same initiative, but manipulate it in a way which is no longer friendly or appropriate, I would say. I don't know kama nimeweka sawa, naona nimetafsiri Kiswahili ngakisema kwa Kiingereza. Yeah, so kwenye digital practices ndio hiyo tunasema nimefika? Okay, yeah, digitization and copyright, yeah. Something was wrong up. Management of digital devices, somehow nimegusia hii. So mimi naomba kusisitiza swala la devices. Swala la devices is very, very important. How are devices managed? Za ofisini, zinatengenezwa wapi? Kwa sababu sometimes you have your device. Where are you taking them when they are broken? Are they trustworthy? What content is there? Who's holding it? How do you manage your device? Normally an office device, for instance a laptop or a PC, normally the way it's supposed to operate in a way anybody with the same level of access as you has to have access to that PC. So if it's for work and you have the same access, but you cannot, you cannot, I don't know, but you cannot, you have information which you feel is sensitive, Those are the things you have to walk through and think, because sometimes a person gets dharura, emergencies. Sometimes the person gets emergencies and you want to get on their PC, it's work, you can't get into it because they have personalized it. So these levels of access, how do you manage your devices? How are they secured? How do you communicate? All these are very important aspects to look into. So I'm just skipping through, and I know that normally when you get to hear this, it's the normal things, but there are things which are, yes, it might seem minor and normal, but there are things which has to be identified and really discussed at the organizational level to get to know how you would manage yourself. So lessons learned. Like I said, I promise there is more, and we've written some more details in the report. We've written observations, we've written recommendations. So we've just skipped through to give you a slice of it. And here we move on to the lessons learned. So one of the lessons we learned is that the NGO landscape in Tanzania, the old and versus the new. It is very interesting that most of the NGOs which are doing very well, they've been there for a very long time. And while the ones which have been here for a long time tend to implement at program-based, because programs has a lot of things, most of the new NGOs tend to work at project-based. Like it's a project, you have a certain project, maybe you can open up, you can open up an NGO, you do that project, maybe you do it again, or maybe it goes, you liquidate it or anything, but that's the difference we saw. So then, when we talk about all, we have NGOs like, I would say TAMWA, we have maybe TGNP, we have, we have a lot of NGOs which have a lot of content. I was talking about digitization and organization digitizing their content. It has been a very recent occurrence. I wouldn't say it has even exceeded more than 4 years for most of the organizations, especially in the NGO community. So talking about only that, when it comes to information, when it comes to data, they have a lot of information which is not available anywhere in the world, not in Tanzania. So they have a lot of information which is not available anywhere. But then again, it has been preserved in hard copies, and most of the other content is lost. Some of the content can be preserved. So that is something, that in itself is a project. I would really implore for such organizations to make sure that they find ways to preserve content which is not preserved, especially those which are in folders being destroyed away. So the way the landscape is, the NGOs which are big, they already have reputation and credibility. So when it comes to the NGO community, we have a lot of them in number, but we have a very few which are doing very big work at a very large scale. There is more to that in the report. So the other thing is misconception of digitization to the NGO community. This is not only to the NGO, this is to the rest of the community, but because the study was based on the NGO, that is why we've said that to the NGO. So digitization, we just take it for granted that we understand it in the same way. But ask people, ask 5, 6 people, and they'll tell you different. They understand it differently. And that difference in understanding is the reason why we differ in thinking, why it is important, and when we should implement, or when we should adapt, or if at all we should. So the different misconception is also a challenge. So somehow there has to be a conversation, or conversations like this, discuss this and find a way in which we can adapt in a way which will be comfortable to us who maybe are not really going for the idea, and also comfortable to the rest of the team in a manner which would be beneficial to the organization in terms of value and impact, of course, and efficiency. So dissertation of the past information and data in the NGO community, that's a very big issue, and I've explained it Pale. And a weak collaboration between ICT-based companies and NGO. So one thing I say, with the work which is there with the NGO world, which we wish you would give us and call us to do, Even if we were to do, even if all the existing companies right now that deal with ICT offer services fully, the gap is very huge. There is a lot of work to do. So one thing about the ecosystem is that we get to learn from each other. It's a really wonderful ecosystem to be present in. There is a lot of work to do. There is a lot of innovations that can be done. There is a lot of solutions to provide. There is a lot of ways we can collaborate, and we are really looking forward to the collaboration. So we're introducing ourselves as a company and the rest of the tech community that we really wish we could collaborate in a way. We cannot necessarily start working together at once, but at least we can start conversations. Call us if you want to understand more, maybe call us, we do a conversation with the team. There is a variety of experts in the field. You've heard here, Mike amesema nimeona kazi nyingi sana, zote hizi kazi. So that's a sort of thing. We can work in a way which we can complement each other. So the NGO world gets to benefit, we get to benefit. This is a theory of change. How do we change from where we are if we've not really changed at all and adapted to the digital, to digital, or if we've adapted partially? So we start, and that is why it is red, the mindset. One of the things we really want is not even clients first. The first thing we want is to change the mindset. I wish if I could, maybe, if I could really be able, sometimes you may know something, but not really know how to portray it or give out the message. One of the wishes we really have is for most of the community, the leaders from the community to get to understand why this is important. So changing the mindset. Yes, digital is important. When you talk about digital, we are not talking about social media. We are talking beyond that. There is a lot of things the NGO is already doing. Rebecca gave wonderful examples right there, and we see them. So what more can we do? How can we collaborate more? How do we make sure that we have put the digital aspect to every program we've put? Right now, you cannot have a program without a digital aspect. And when we're talking about digital, we are not talking about communications, Yamani. Yani, we are not talking about social media or communications. So when you put the digital aspect in a program, a project, make it independent. That way it will be holistic. That way you will reach out to a lot of people. That way it will be more impactful. So talking about digital, we are not only talking about reach of people who had that content or heard about that program. We are talking about what you have done to make sure that you are attaining whatever stories are driven from that project last forever. There are a lot of wonderful stories, a lot of wonderful work being done in the community, but they are in archive. Yes, we get press releases, you get some information, but most of the beautiful information is stored in the archives. So the mindset change. From the mindset change, then we go to the goal. You create a goal as an organization. What do you want? When do you want to change? Do you want to change? We have different goals and aspirations. It is good to put a goal. We cannot change like tomorrow. You have to have a goal. Oh, now we have to go 6 months. Let's plan in 6 months. Or in 1 year. What are we going to do? What are the gaps? What can we do? Then after that, you do a SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis of what will determine your next move, the process. So SWOT analysis, knowing that you want to go digital is not enough. You really need to understand what is to be done. What are the partners? What is the process? Who is the right person? Do we really want to do that? Are we ready? Then you go through the process, which sort of gives you a digital transformation and adaptation. Then the elements. Elements and attributes comes after you have adapted. You want to adapt to get to know if you have the right attributes to be code that you really have, that you really had it in the right way. And to be able to attain all that, then you get to the final stage where you have capacitated as an organization to be a code that you're a fully fledged digital organization. Then how fully digitalization looks like. So the fully We're talking about 4 segments. We're talking about capacity, applied technologies, agility and optimization, and digital etiquette. So when we talk about culture, that comes with internally, do you have an online gender-based maybe approach, that sort of thing? You're talking about culture is, it comes with how do you communicate maybe, how do you communicate online as an individual? So sometimes you have an individual who works at the office. You know, watu wanasema, my tweets are my own, but if you are associated with a certain organization and you're tweeting like tweeting, then you say that my tweets are my own, my dear. That is damaging for, your tweets are never your own. You always have to know that. So culture carries a lot of things. When we talk about policies, digital ethics, we are talking about policies. I just put policies, but it's also guidelines. So you don't really need, you don't always need policies, but you need a guideline or to sort of guide you that this is what we're going to be doing. We agree, so why are we doing this? That way, you make sure that every person and member of the organization gets to understand why they're doing it. And that is why when a person joins an organization, you really have to have a session. Of course, we rarely do that maybe, but you have to have a session and share why the policies exist and why they're there. Otherwise, they're just papers in an archive somewhere. So we're talking about applied technologies. Applied technologies, watu kama IPF wanaingia hapo. Mike also does that. Applied technologies, we're talking about programs, we're talking about operations, we are talking about innovations. So that is all in applied technologies. And capacity, expertise, we're talking about software, we're talking about hardware, EOYOTA we've talked about, and those, all this cycle has been in one way or another been reviewed in the survey we did and in the segments that we've showed. So I would say my presentation ends there. This is our context. Thank you very much. Please follow us on social media.
Would like to welcome 2 questions on the report. Anybody with a question, an observation? For the sake of time, going once, going twice, gone. Oh, there we go. Okay.
Thank you very much for the comprehensive report. My name is Martha Ngambi. I'm the country director for Global Peace Foundation Tanzania. My question is, for those marks that you shared, you mentioned that some of the NGOs scored 2, 3, 4 out of 32, 35. Yeah. I don't know Global Peace, how much how did we score? But my question is, do you have any plans to help those NGOs that scores 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 to ensure that they improve, you know? Yeah, because I think it's very, very important to have those policies and all the mechanisms that you mentioned. So I wanted to know if you have got any strategic plan. Thank you.
For the interest of time na wasiwasi kusimama mbele, I've cut out a lot of things. For instance, we've given a lot of recommendations from the report. We have devised what we call a digital system audit. Like you call us and we'll give you, we would operate on you and give you an analysis on every segment which has to do with digital in your organization. But apart from that, we thought that it is better not to mention which NGOs we worked with. An NGO which wants its results, we can share. That was very cooperative. Those questionnaires are what gave us this. So for anybody, for any NGO, we've shared some of them who wanted to know. And the only person we reached out to say that you guys have scored this were the ones who had 32, because we were very impressed and we thought it's only fair they get to know they are doing wonderfully. Yeah, very impressive. So, and that is why we are doing this. You know, you cannot go to an NGO leader and say, we want to change this. And that is why today the conversation was with NGO leaders, decision makers, to make sure that they get to see this, understand, and if at all they want further conversations. And the first conversation with any NGO which we worked with, it would be Kabisa would go there at any time, at any time at their dispersal. We will go there and we will share our insights. They want to end session, we will share at least a 1 hour session. Kabisa, anytime you want that. For any of the 20 that participated. Yes.
We are almost done. Tumeanza kuzoea kusimama hapa.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite Asha Abinala, CEO and founder of Media Convergency, to invite our guest of honor, Honorable Dr. Faustin Dugulile, to speak with us today.
Thank you very much, Halila. Oh, I'm short. So, one of the things I would really like to acknowledge and really celebrate is the flexibility when you want to talk about the conversation in ICT with Mheshimiwa. Like you, yeah. Yeah. I would say it has been part of this journey. And I really appreciate that. It's not that the report was ready and we code. No, it was part of this journey when it comes to advice, what's the approach. We went all over, and we also went to core stake. We really wanted to understand the landscape and everything. So it really, really means a lot to me for his time here. He did fly in today. So somehow, nimefurahi sana, 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 sana. Thank you, Mheshimiwa. On that note, thank you very much for accepting to be part of this conversation. I really, really appreciate, because somehow mtu kama Faith leo at least atapata majibu pengine ya kila alichosema, and I feel really, really honored and humbled. And so yeah, naomba nikukaribishe Mheshimiwa Honorable Dr. Faustin Dugulile, uje ongee na sisi hapa mawili matatu. Asante.
Kwa nivue barakoa kidogo. Asha Abinala, founder and CEO of Media Convergency. Madam Christine Musisi, the resident representative UNDP here in Tanzania, distinguished panelists, leaders in NGO community, development partners, invited guests, the media corp, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Nawasalimu kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Thank you very much for inviting me to come and speak to you today and participate in the launch of this very informative report. First and foremost, I would like to reaffirm the government's position on the NGOs. We as the government regards the NGOs as our strategic partners in development. And we believe that the NGOs play a very critical role in catalyzing development, but also on the oversight of the government, different government programs. So on behalf of the government, we do appreciate that. And before I embark on what I'm planning to say today, I would like to introduce the new ministry that I'm heading. This is a very new ministry. It's about 6 months old. It was formulated December last year, and I'm the first minister. I don't come from the ICT background. I have a medical background, so I'm a medical doctor. So I've been tasked with responsibility of disrupting the ICT sector in this country. And maybe I just need to introduce this new ministry because I don't think so many people understand what we do. This ministry was formulated with the vision of harnessing the potential of the fourth industrial revolution. We, as a country, wanted to make sure that we go with that wave, of which the fourth industrial revolution, the core component is ICT. But as we embark on the digital economy journey, we also, as a government, wanted to make sure that we are at the forefront of ensuring the potentials of digital economy in this country and the digital transformation, for that matter, are also potentiated. There's a huge component now you're seeing of business moving online, and even here in Tanzania, you're seeing the young people harnessing the potential of e-commerce, young people importing items from abroad, even buy these items locally. They don't rush to have frames in Sinza or Kariakor. They store the items at their houses, put pictures on social media, sell them, and if you like some stuff, you go inbox, you agree on the prices, they send border to your place. So there is no prices for the frames, there is no business license, there is no taxes being paid, but there's a lot of money that's moving around that area. And we as government were watching. But it's for the good thing. We want this sector to grow first. But I'm also tasked with the responsibility of making sure that the area of ICT and the digital economy also contributes to the gross domestic product. So in the next 5 years, we want to grow it from the current 1.5% to 3%. So in every fabric of your life, since you woke up this morning, I've been with you. So if you open the radio and listen to music, it's because I've enabled that radio to be heard. If you watch TV, because I've enabled that TV to be watched. If you made a call this morning, it's because I've enabled that call to be made. If you made the mobile transactions, it's because I've enabled that mobile money transaction to be made. If you transferred money from your bank online to your mobile account, it's because I've enabled that to be done. If you traveled like I did this morning, from the control towers to the plane where it landed today, because I've enabled that to happen today. If you paid bills, whether it's land rent, or if you bought local today, or you bought some vouchers, it's because I've enabled those to be made, that transaction to be made. If you access the internet today, now so many many of you accessing internet today, is because we have enabled that to be done. If you access social media, it's because we have enabled them to happen. If you were on the way coming here, you met the police and they find you, it's because we have enabled the police to find you. So we are everywhere. if you in whatever connections that you're talking about, in every fabric of your life, communication, telecommunication play a very critical role. It's an essential tool. It's not a necessity anymore. So our role as government is to make sure that we create that enabling environment and we create that ecosystem. Maybe I just need to also mention some of the major projects that we are doing to create and create enabling that ecosystem. One is the broadband coverage, and we are tasked by 2025 to make sure that 80% of this country is covered by broadband backbone. We have now reached the region. We have managed to get to all regions, and the next year we want to make sure that we get to almost all districts. We have currently 7,910 kilometers of national ICT backbone. And the next year we are going to construct another 1,808. We want to make sure by 2025 we are able to get to 15,000 kilometers of national ICT backbone. And this is the main road of communication in this country. But not only that, we want to be the hub of communication in the region. We are surrounded by 8 countries. So far we have managed to get to 8. Right now we are working to connect Tanzania with the Mozambique. The work is currently ongoing. And you're also doing feasibility to connect with the DRC, and that work is going to start next year. So come towards the end of next year, we are going to be able to connect all these neighboring countries with our national backbone. We have also started embarking on the rural connectivity, and this is one of the major projects that we are currently doing. Currently, 94% of all Tanzanians are able to access telecommunication services, but we also have 60% of Tanzania covered by communication coverage. But the other area, and in the next, actually yesterday we announced a new tender to cover the bordering areas, because in certain areas where you go, you get communication from neighboring countries. So we started embarking on a major project to make sure that all these other areas that are bordering other countries, all the communication, we want them to be secured and able to access communication from the Tanzanian side. But also to ensure that, we also want to ensure that we also bridge this digital divide between the rural and the urban area and try and focus on the rural connectivity. The other big project that we are currently having is what you call the residential address and postcode projects. This is the mainstay of e-commerce. In the next 5 years, we want to make sure that if it is possible, to ensure that you don't no longer go to the post office. If you have your parcel and you have your goods, they're going to be delivered at your doorsteps. So we want to make sure that every street in Tanzania and they have every house as a number. So you are going to have physical residential addresses and postcode, but we also want to move also to virtual as we build on the physical infrastructure. So this is the direction that we want to go in the next couple of years. But in addition to that, we are also embarking on building capacity and developing skills. So we've started by developing guidelines for registration of all the ICT professionals in Tanzania. And if some of you are here, I would urge you to register through ICTC. I think the information is available on the website. Whether you've studied ICT or you have an interest in ICT, we have all those different categories. We wanted to identify all of you, where you are, what you are doing, and this is going to help us to develop you. So we want to embark on a very aggressive agenda to develop skills. We've done an assessment, and we've identified the critical skills that we need in Tanzania, including artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, big data analysis, cybersecurity, software development, and so many others. So we want now to embark on a very aggressive program to make sure that Tanzania also becomes a hub of skills in ICT like so many other places. And I think this is going to create a lot of employment opportunity for young people, and also bring some money and create employment for so many young people. Somebody mentions about data privacy and data security and protection. This is another agenda that we are currently working on. We had a small study, and we did it here in Dar es Salaam. We went to Kinondoni district, and we collected those envelopes. You find them at the pharmacy. When you buy medicines, they put it in a smaller envelopes. We collected 300 of them. Out of those 300 envelopes that we collected, we found that 260 had personal information. They had medical reports of someone. They had application letter somebody applied to an organization. They had passport applications. They had information about somebody paying bills at the hotel. And it had the name, how many nights they slept at that particular place, and what their companions was, what they ate and what they drank. So you can see how much information is out there. So we want to come with a new law, and we are going to call it Personal Data Protection, Privacy and Data Protection Law. We are in a very advanced stage in the process, and the aim is not to muzzle the freedom of expression, but is rather to protect you. We want to be you to be in this digital world, to be in control of the information that the information that is collected, the authority that you're going to give in terms of what data is revealed to whom, how it is being used. And in this digital era, there's a lot of export of data. You're using Twitter, you're using Facebook, you're using Instagram for free, but somebody else is using that data. How it's being used, we don't have a control over. So we want to make sure that we put measures in place to protect the privacy, but also and protect the data that we collected. It's being collected by public institutions, it's collected by the private sector, but how data is also being used by different entities, whether it's public or the private. So you can see that my ministry is not only about the things that trend in the social media. We have bigger plots and making sure that we create a bigger and important ecosystem for digital transformation in Tanzania. So digital transformation is inevitable. And we as a country need to go with these global trends. And I think with the advent of COVID-19, it has fast-tracked the digital transformation, but also it has exposed so many gaps in the way we do business, but it's also changed the way we do business. So the NGO sector and the public sector need to go with this wave. And I always believe that if we don't change, the change will change us. So one of the panelists spoke about being a disruptor or being disrupted. I think there's a very thin line. We need to be on top of this game. Otherwise, if we don't change, we are going to be irrelevant. We are going to be irrelevant. So the report that Asha presented has highlighted some of the work that the NGO sector needs to do. We in the public sector have already started. And that is one of my major responsibilities, digitizing the government. We are digitizing the government. I'm a firm believer that the government needs to go to the people rather than the people going to the government. So for me, I'm not very proud seeing people lining up in public offices. I would rather seeing the public offices going to the palm and devices of the people. And we have made some huge progress. So there's a huge transformation, and we are very aggressive plan as narrated in the party manifesto, CCM party manifesto for 2020-2025. But we also have a very big project that is incoming, Tanzania Digital Program. It's a World Bank project, and we managed to secure almost $150 million to try to digitize different entities. And we are going to start with schools, health systems, but also the government services. So this is some of the things that we as government we are doing. So the NGO sector also needs to go hand in hand at the same speed that we as government are moving. I've seen the report. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done from the NGO sector, but this, I think, is a wake-up call. And we, as a government, are going to work together with you to make sure that we work as left behind. But I think what we need to do is start acting now. And there's opportunity out there. As we speak today, we have 52 million registered SIM cards in Tanzania. We have 32 SIM cards that are using mobile money services. We have 29 million SIM cards that are used for internet. So the potential is there. We have 66% of the country covered by 3G and above. We have 94% of Tanzanians are able to access telecommunication services. So the potentials are there. And I think with this, but if you look at in terms of internet coverage in the country, which is around 63%, the utilization is only 23%. Very low. There's a gap of almost 40%. So, and this is an area that we, as government, we want to back. And one of the measures that we did, whether it's going to be good or not, we have removed taxes on mobile, on digital devices. So for this financial year, as of yesterday, I think the prices of phones and other tablets should be going down. Should be going down. And we want to increase that penetration because we have been given the task to ensure that we increase internet penetration and the usage in the country. So we've removed taxes on digital devices. So I would urge you as an NGO community to also to make noises on that area. So the prices of smartphones and other digital devices go down. The government has removed taxes. The aim is to make sure that we want to we are going to make some regular assessment to see whether this is going to be materializing. As I mentioned, we are digitizing the government services, but for us, we are looking to increase more efficiency within the government service delivery, but also having more accountability and the transparency in the way we do our businesses. So, in line with what is being presented here, and there's a matter of the way forward, I had also my request to the NGO community who are present here today. One is advocacy. Advocacy for access, affordability, and availability of digital services in order to bridge the current divides that we have, the rural and urban divide, but also the gender divide. There's a very huge gender divide out there, but we need to have some advocacy around that area. One of the panelists talked about the policies and law. We also need the NGO fraternity to champion some reforms. The ICT sector is a very dynamic sector. We cannot have static laws and we cannot have static policies. It's your duty and it's your role to inform us and to engage us in the areas that you think we need to do some reviews. We are currently looking at that, and in the current parliament session that we had, we changed some laws, but that I think is not enough. But if there's any areas that you think that are stifling the growth of the sector and the ICC sector, we are more than happy to look at. And one of the areas that I've promised that we are going to change is the online landscape. We had so many laws and fees that are prohibiting creativity, innovation, and we promised that we are going to change that very, 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 very soon. The other area that we think that the NGO sector needs to do is oversight. This is an area is still very gray, and it's a very new area for some of you. We have so many oversight NGO overseeing the health sector, the education sector, human rights, policy and governance, but very few on the area of ICT. We want to also to have the SIKIKA, the policy forum, the other entities who are going to tell us, you guys are going in the right direction. This is now in this area you're not doing the right thing. So I think I would motivate you to also start considering having some NGOs that are looking on areas of ICT in Tanzania, and we as a government are going to give you that cooperation. I urge you as NGO to champion solutions, and I think I like that what Mike Mush said, to champion solutions that transform lives. Looking at e-health, e-education, e-agriculture, e-legal service, and the entire landscape. As I said, there's so many people out there that have access to technology, they have access to communication, and I think we can come with some solutions to help people, especially in the rural areas, but also in the urban area, to solve some of the challenges that people have. So for me, as a minister in this sector, I concur with what you said, and I'm really looking forward to see now more NGOs coming up with the technological solution to some of the challenges that we have in our communities. Before coming here, I spoke to the registrar of the NGOs, and I was before my current portfolio, I was the Deputy Minister for Health, and I was in charge of the NGOs, and I was very passionate of introducing technology in terms of and the way we run and operate that department within the Ministry of Health. So when I came this morning, I spoke to the registrar, and she informed me that now there's a platform online for anyone who wants to apply to register an NGO. Right now you can do it online, which is a good progress. When I left the Ministry of Health, this was working in progress. But now some of you are able to file reports online, including your contract submissions, which is also an area of which is also a very good progress. And she's even informed me some of your organization are able to integrate your platforms with their platform for reminding and also the filing and also getting some feedback. And I would urge you, some of you, as you grow your capacity and your digital transformation, to make sure that you harness that opportunity. And the registrar told me that she's going to give you all the cooperation that you need. Another area that I would urge you as a NGO community is the usage of internet. One of the things that I've stayed in this ministry for the last 6 months, that there's a lot of, I think, needs to be done. The public awareness is still very low. Very people know how to use technology. Very few people know what the laws that exist. Very people know what their rights are. And very few people know where to go and seek redress. We have a poker law. It has so many regulations. Very few people know what all those regulations are, what are their rights, what they're supposed to do, and what they're not supposed to do. So I think for me, as the NGO community, you need to help to work together with the government, and this is, I think this is another call for, to create NGOs which are very specifically addressing this public awareness. What can I write online? What cannot I write online? What do the laws say? What is my right? There's a lot of online fraud right now. What am I supposed to do online? What am I not supposed to do? What information can I divulge to whom? How? And then when there's a problem, where do I go to get a redress? So there's a lot of things. We as government are doing it, but I hope that also the NGO community, you can help us in that area. But you also want to have safe cyberspace, especially for girls. There's a lot of cyberbullying there. I also get bullied. So we want to create an enabling environment in the cyberspace, especially for young girls and women to be able to access and use cyberspace for personal development, but also growth for business and any other thing they want to do. So I've seen some people are working on that area, but I would want to see more people engaging that. The more the voices, I think, is the better. If we have very few voices, I think they get swallowed by some of these cyber bullies that we have online. But again, news spread and travel very fast. There's a lot of fake news out there. We need also platform to say this is correct, this is not correct. We are trying within government to respond quickly when there's a fake news that comes out of community, but also we need also the community fact checkers to assist the government to make sure that what goes out in the public is the correct information. The lady from Tigo, I didn't quite get your name. You mentioned about data. I think this is an area that we can assist. So if you want to use the data for the good, I'm not seeing what the problem is. TCRI is under my jurisdiction. We can quickly work to make sure that we resolve that. So this is something that we can work on very, very, very fast. In terms of ICT and digital literacy, there's a very good opportunity, the window of opportunity that is opened up right now. The Minister of Education is now is in the process of reviewing the curriculum, and I'm also following up that very closely. Now, when I was coming this morning, I had an engagement in the plane with a very senior official within the Minister of Education, and for me, I'm seeing that we need to start investing on ICT from very early on. So a young person meeting a computer for the first time at the university, I think we are very late. We need to start very early on. We need to cast the iron while it's hot. And for me, the primary level, I think, is the right entry place. So we're going to have different programs through my ministry, but we are going to work together, Ministry of Education, starting different programs. But also the NGOs community, you could be part of this. I'm thinking of having some coding schools for, during school breaks. Yes, your children are going to concentrate with their tuition and the rest of the school, extra school curriculum. But let's get started, these young people getting introduced to the computer, they get introduced to some different programs and coding programs. Few will continue in that area. Others will continue with the academic career. For me, what I want to see in the next 5 years, we create a potential of innovators and skilled ICT skill sets within the country. We're not going to be able to provide employment to everyone, but I think it's sure bet. If we create enough programmers, we create enough cybersecurity, create enough pool of people who know how to do big data analysis, they can get jobs anywhere in the world. Well, they're based here in Tanzania. So that you create jobs, but you also bring forex income. So for me, as I said, the startup programs is very passionate. It's something that I'm spearheading. But I'm glad that also the president has also bought into this. She's also championing this. And I can assure that after that meeting, we are going to look at the legal and institutional framework and make sure that we create an enabling environment for the startups and innovators in Tanzania. So I've deviated from what was the core business today, but I thought I should share this with you so that at least you know what my ministry is responsible for, what we do, what we are planning, but what would request the NGO sector to do. But what I can say is that we are ready. My ministers, we have an open door policy. We are very open-minded. If you have an idea of what we need to do, any day, any time, please come to me. Christine, we met this week, but I'd forgotten it was Tuesday. For me, the difference between Monday and Sunday is a very thin line. And 10 o'clock and 10 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock a.m. and 10 o'clock p.m. is very fast. We are still at the very infancy stage of the setup of the ministry. While the other ministers are running, we have to sprint in order to catch up. But within 6 months, we have done so much to create, first of all, make sure that the ministry stands, but start tackling some of the major institutional, legal, and frameworks within my institution. And some of the people who have interacted with my institution, I think you have seen that my institutions have started changing. They've started changing. We have changed the mentality, including my friends at TCRA. In the past, when you are called by TCRA, it spells some bad news. But now it's more friendly. We are an enabler of growth in ICT sector. We don't want to be the police of ICT. This is what I want to be remembered for the for the duration that I'm going to stay in this ministry. Well, it depends. We save at the pleasure of. We usually save at the pleasure of, but we want to be remembered that the people we made the sector of ICT grow. We spearheaded the digital transformation, and we spearhead the dividends coming out of digital transformation. But this and the young people are able to harness this potential. So lastly, I would like to thank you, Asha, for the good work. I think you mentioned this project last year we met. That was just before election. It was after my part primaries. We met, you mentioned this. I never knew that I was going to be standing here today. It was around August, July last year. And I'm glad that this project has come to fruition. Hongera sana. This is a very good finding, and I hope that the NGO fraternity here is going to take note of that. Lakini kama nimalizia kusema, we are ready. Wizara yangu mimi iko tayari. Kama mna jambo ambalo mnadhani tunaweza tukasaidiana, njooni. Lakini nataka na sasa tuone some more NGOs ambazo zinadili na sekta yangu. Sawa? Kutoa elimu, jinsi gani ya kubridge divide, jinsi gani ya kumake cyber space more friendly kwa ajili ya matumizi, lakini jinsi gani sasa tunaweza kwenda kutibu tatizo kule. What innovation solutions that are able to sort out the problems that are there out in the community. Anytime mtu yoyote akiwa na wazo, karibuni sana, na sisi tuko tayari kuwasikiliza. Baada ya kuyacheza haya machache, niwashukuru sana. Tutaiomba hiyo report yako officially. You need to write to us officially so that we can also have it. But also, if there's any area that we think as a ministry, we'll be more than ready and willing to assist. Mwisho kabisa ni correct jina la wizara yangu. Wizara yangu sio wizara ya information. I don't deal with information. It's the Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. I don't deal with the information. Information eco under the Ministry of Information, Sports, and but I enable them. I enable them kwa sababu registrations za TV, radios, frequencies zao zote, I deal with them. On the issues of content, how you use it is not my responsibility. Sawa, lakini the information technology, this is my responsibility. So my ministry is Ministry of Communication and Information Technology. Baada ya kusema hayo machache, ni washukuruni sana, asanteni sana, na wasalimu kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania.
Kazi iendelee. Mheshimiwa Waziri, kwa ruhusa yako naomba nikuombe uketi kwenye stage. Tafadhali. Ladies and gentlemen, another hand of applause for the Minister of Communications and Information Technology. We're going to welcome 2 questions from the floor to the Honorable Minister. Karibuni. Got one there. In the interest of gender, I'm looking for a lady that has not spoken on the panel. Somebody else. To submit the bias, I'd like a lot more people in the room to engage, if that's okay. If there isn't any person, I'll come. Anybody? I can force. Do we have? Oh, this table, we're forcing. Okay. So who from this table should I? Krishna. Okay. Krisha, sorry. Krisha, I'll come back to you. Let me start with Joseph Manarakita, and then Krisha. Here you go. That you shall ask the questions. Mheshimiwa, tupokee maswali yote mawili kwa pamoja au moja moja? Haya, yote mawili.
Thanks, Arila. Thanks, Dr. Nugulile. I just wanted to start with a general comment. First of all, congratulating Asha for making this happen. I think we had talked about that, it was in the pipeline. Now great to see it happening. And I think it's a very good step in the right direction because and having started from NGOs, I think Mike started on the role of NGOs in making this digital space kind of being more impactful. And he mentioned that the government is more of a client, which I probably can disagree with him. It's also more of an empowerer than just a client. And when the Honorable Minister was speaking, the way he started mentioning how he personally and his ministry kind of affects our personal lives, I was a bit, I actually had never thought about that. And I was like, if this ministry was in the hands of the wrong person, we were really doomed. Because he literally touches on every bit of our lives. Like, okay. Maybe some kind of consoling fact that he's someone who is really passionate about growing the industry, and then we hope if it happens that they change, whoever is going to come after is also going to follow in your footsteps. So far, I think congratulations for the good work that you have done so far in the past 6 months. So we have actually seen it, and there has been quite a lot of talk about it, definitely because it's a ministry which is moving. I think criticism and feedback comes to someone who's actually doing something. So congratulations for that. I just wanted to touch on the question that was raised by Faith. It's a good thing that we said that she should come to you to see how you can make that happen, because I feel like much as your ministry is doing a great job, I think there's still need for clarity of collaboration among the ministries or government institutions. She mentioned about 4 institutions that she had to go through to get approval that she hasn't got to date. And I feel like on the side of the government, there is still this fear of the unknown, because if there is no policy about something, then we are kind of scared of taking action. In the process, we kind of stop everything, development that could actually be happening. And I'm not quite sure how far your ministry can go to kind of spearhead this kind of collaboration among the government, because what you're actually doing is also touches on everything that the government does. I would really like to hear more about that. You have addressed it partially, but maybe probably could say something about it. The other part is on the skills development that you have also talked about. It's not just for young people, but I keep on stressing that we need to capacitate more the government officials, because especially when it comes to enabling, whether it's innovators, startups, every NGOs, they also need to kind of appreciate the power of ICT, and they cannot appreciate it if they have never been exposed to it. So I think you need to come up with a very big initiative on how to actually educate the government officials to like and start using ICT as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joseph. Krisha?
Thank you, Mheshimiwa, for all the really exciting initiatives that you outlined. It's great to see there's some great stuff. My question in some ways is not so far away from my colleagues. When we talk about innovation and digital transformation, there is this underlying idea of freedom. Freedom of ideas, freedom of exchange, that I think really underpins this innovation. And so, as much as I really welcome hearing all the kind of initiatives that you're taking, it's about, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you think about that connection, you know, from a slightly philosophical rather than practical point of view. And I say that because I think people have raised challenges today about the regulatory environment, and I think you touched on that, and I think that's really important. But sometimes it's about something more than that. I come from, sorry, I didn't introduce myself. My name is Risha Chande from Twaweza. So we're quite well known for collecting data. I think Rebecca mentioned that we used to have Sautizo and IT. I know you're familiar, Mheshimiwa. And at the moment, the regulatory and the legal environment for data collection is actually very liberal. The law is nice, we're allowed to publish. It's more liberal than it used to be in 2015. It was changed 2 times in 2 years. Yet, in a practical sense, we're not able to collect data. And that is a little bit because of some of the apprehension that my colleague was speaking about, a bit of fear of the unknown. And I think that in order to kind of move forward, particularly in the digital space, and to particularly embrace all that digital can be for us, which is more than, you've talked a lot about the economic examples, and I think they're really strong and exciting. But there's also a way in which the digital space interacts with our politics, for example, and how we perceive those politics and how we interact with them. And I think all of that is underpinned. Again, I come back to this idea of freedom. So I'd love to hear from your position as minister how within your ministry and within the government you see this and what you think about it. Thank you.
Asanteni sana. Mheshimiwa, karibu kwenye kujibu maswali. Was there? Okay. Sawa sawa.
Asante Mheshimiwa, ndio uzuri wa kuwa mzee. So thank you very much, Asha, for the initiative that you have taken. And I think we also need to acknowledge the fact that you worked with the, is it 20 NGOs, did you say, that participated? The number of NGOs which participated in the study, 20. So we have like more than, I think, thousands of NGOs in Tanzania, okay? And we are talking about something that is very expensive if we are not acknowledging that. It's not cheap, These communication technology programs are expensive, and most NGOs don't have sufficient funding to, to enable them to do that. Much as, of course, we've got to start from the point of view that they have to, have capacity and, the willingness that you talked about to make decisions, okay? But then do they have financial capacity to, enable themselves to jump into this sector? So I just wanted to point out that. But then I want, Mheshimiwa, sorry, I want to go back to the question which was raised by the lady from Tigo. And I think my friend has also talked about it a little bit. But I feel we need to understand the impact of what she was talking about, not only for the work that she is doing, but generally for the cost of running government business and the cost of people, accessing the government, And then we come down to the point that we are asking ourselves whether or not it is these systems that are not talking to each other, or it is the people who are managing these systems who don't understand how the systems are working. And I'll give an example. I have two contradictory examples. One, you go to BRELA, you want to register a company, you simply submit your name, and they come back to you with questions. For example, this person is not taxpayer registered. Can we have their taxpayer registration number? Okay, which means they've gone into the system and they found that, okay, person A registered and the identification number ya NIDA hiyo hapo. Person B not registered. Please supply this information. And then they'll still come back to you to confirm, is this still your residence address? Which means it is already in the system at the point when you registered for your national ID or TIN number or whatever. Okay? Now, one of my daughters turned 18 last week, and she's going back to school next week. So I asked her to go and process the national ID, at least to lodge the application and then leave it there. We know how long it takes. So she went to Serikali ya Mtaa, she got the form, she filled the form, and in the form, there is a part that you have to fill the national ID for your parents, your father and your mother. And she also has the birth certificate. Okay? Zote amejaza na amepeleka. So, she was returned back to go and bring a copy of national ID ya baba, national ID ya mama, and a sworn affidavit from a district magistrate. So she comes back and she's like, I'm confused. How can digital and analog work together? Because they should have this information in the system. And now they want analog information, copies of the same information that they were supposed to have in the system. But in addition, they want a sworn affidavit that you are we ni raia. Sasa hizi zingine zote nimezipata wapi? Kama sikuwa raia. You see? So then, what is the cost for that? That is my question. Mtu amekwenda huku, amepelekwa huku, rudi nenda kalete kile, nini, time wasted. Nadhani ni hapo tu mheshimiwa. I think that is what the lady is talking about. It's not about how many institutions that you're supposed to access. Why should you actually? It's supposed to only happen at one point. You enter there, all your information is accessed, and whatever that you're supposed to process happens. Asante mheshimiwa.
Asante sana. Mheshimiwa, karibu kujibu.
Thank you much to all the contributors from the floor. And your questions were very informative. And I think I'll start with what Korea was talking about. We as a government have made some progress in the last 5 years. One, building local systems rather than using imported systems. Currently, over 70 to 80% of the systems that are being used by the government are locally made. It's good progress. We used to spend a lot of money buying systems and pay licenses, But now that has gone down drastically. We are now building more robust and very complex systems that are being used with quite a number of institutions. But we still have a challenge in terms of integration, because some of these systems were being built with looking at one single entity rather than looking in an integrated way. And the different entities could have used one system with the different portals. So it's work in progress, and this is one area that we are currently working on, harmonization and integration of systems. You find even in one system, and the one ministry has 20 to 30 systems. System for every single entity that they do, when they could have one system with the different modules for different entities that they are doing. So this is work in progress. We've made progress in terms of building locally owned systems, but yes, I admit that we have a challenge in terms of integration and harmonization and interoperability of system. And I think I would say this is work in progress. But also working to change the mentality, because what you're describing is changing our mentality. If I have a national ID, that means that I'm already verified Tanzanian. If I show you, I don't need you to go and prove again that this is my ID. You can look at the picture, you can look at me and say, okay, you are verified. So we also need to work on changing mentality, and I agree with you, Manirakiza, that this is an area that we need to invest on, because not everyone understands this digital transformation. There's a lot of new things that are coming up, and this is the divide that you currently have between the young generation and the old generation. The older generation, we tend to believe on papers. Anything digital, it gives them some goosebumps. So we need to invest in making sure that we also change the mentality and try and sensitize the government officials. And the rest of it's just bureaucracy. And I can give you an example. I came to this ministry 6 months ago. There was a lot of things that were happening, which were very restrictive, very prohibitive. We did a lot of work now to just start changing mentality within my own sphere and the institutions that I oversee. There's been a very huge transformation. I'll give an example of TCRA. TCRA, people used to be scared of it. If you're called by TCRA, it was spelling bad news 6 months ago. But we managed to change that. And I said, guys, no. We need to nurture our MNOs, our friends. They made mistakes, correct them. I've not penalized any MNOs for the last 6 years. But we made sure that we make sure that they understand what they're doing wrong, make corrective measures. If they do make mistakes, that's where we're going to penalize them. And they understand, and there's a lot of transformation that is going on. So for me, what I'm saying is that we are trying to change that. We're trying to change the mentality. We're trying to change the bureaucracy. We're trying to make sure that we need to be more responsive. We need to be more responsive to the needs of the community that we serve, especially in this ICT sector. If we want to grow local content, if we want to create more employment, we need to be more flexible to the needs of the people that were using ICT. The measures that we put, the laws that we're putting in place were very prohibitive. And yet we're the ones who are complaining that we don't have adequate online content. So we are going to change everything. We are going to change the landscape of online content. We are going to change the way the televisions are operating. We are going to change everything, all the laws and the landscape that surround them. So on the issue of coordination, my ministry is responsible for the ICT policy, with the custodian of the ICT policy. This means that my ministry is responsible for all issues that ICT-related issues across the government, from the financial sector to social services to defense and the security. That's why I'm saying in every fabric of our life, I'm there. I'm part of it. So, but it's work in progress. It's work in progress. We are 6 months old. There's certain certain issues that we've changed, but there's more that we need to do. More laws we need to act. One is data privacy law, but the other one is going to be ICT law. In order for me to implement the ICT policy, I need also to have some law in place to give me mandate to be able to oversee that and also properly regulate what is happening within the ICT sector. So, on the issues of access information that are related to my ministry, we are going to work together that. But what I can tell you, there's a lot of changes that are currently going on within the government. We have very clear instruction from our current president that we should ease the way we do business, and each organization and each ministry is looking internally to make sure that we streamline our processes, to make sure that whoever interacts with us, there's very little bureaucracy related to those processes, but access to information. And that's why I said for the issue of data, like what you presented, that I can deal with, because this is under my portfolio, and we've been told to make decisions. I'm going to make some decisions. Simple. Huh? So the sooner you engage me, the sooner you're going to get your approval. And I don't think you need to go to all these other people as long as, because we, the custodian of the work that you are doing, I think that we can quickly sort out. But we are working with others to make sure that that language is also understandable, and make sure that whatever obstacles that we see in other different entities which are related to us, we also try to troubleshoot. So Twaweza and others, we are more than you're welcome. Actually, there's certain data I need on the ICT. For example, I need data on digital literacy. This is an information. I need data on the access and availability of ICT services. I need data on the digital divide. I need data on the population, the demographics, and the usage of data and the things like that. There's a lot of information that I need. So for me, you come to me, let's design some study, and you're going to get the approvals quickly. Sisi kwenye ICT hatuna maneno. Sasa, kwa hiyo there's a lot of information that we need. Kwa hiyo Twaweza, if you are ready, come to me. Sisi tutafanya hizo studies. I need them yesterday. Sasa, kwa sababu we need to start to have some basic baseline information katika hilo. Swala la freedom, we have no problem with the freedom of expression. I mean, ile nalisema, I'm very clear katika ICT. We have some buttons, lakini tumejaribu sana kuruhusu freedom of expression. Sawa. Lakini ni lazima na sisi tuendelee kutoa elimu. Rights zako zinaanzia wapi, zinaishia wapi, na wapi unapokwenda kuinfringe the right of somebody else. Katika hii digital era sasa hivi tuna changamoto kidogo. We have sorry for the other people who don't understand. But we have some challenges, people not knowing where the boundaries are. Sindio? People don't know where the boundaries are, and this is just a matter of education. So I think we need to invest more in education people, so that people they know what their rights, what they can say, what they cannot say. Na lakini vile vile sisi as a government we have no problem kabisa katika swala la expression of interest. We are following what is going on katika cyberspace. There's a lot of things that the majority of Tanzanians are using the online platform for the good. Wachache wanaitumia vibaya. Tunaendelea kutoa elimu, lakini na vile tunachukua hatua. Sawa. Tunachukua hatua. Sheria zipo. Bahati mbaya sana sijasema, lakini kuna one siku ndio mimi nitakuja kusema. Nitasema. Lakini sheria zipo, lakini tumesema kwamba let's invest katika masuala ya elimu, and this is where the NGO community can also be of help. People don't understand. Mtu anafikiri kwamba akiwa na mobile phone na ana internet ana freedom ya kuweza kufanya jambo lolote wakati wote. That's not right. Sawa. Yes, kuna sheria zipo zinazogovern hizo cyberspace na vitu gini na nini, na sheria nyingine za nchi zipo vizuri, lakini we want to invest on education hii tutalisema, najua tutapigwa mishale, lakini tutalisema tu. Sawa sawa? Tunasiri tutalisema tu kwamba jamani, this is how it is, lakini freedom ipo, we don't want to muzzle anyone, na wala hatutaki kumsilence mtu yeyote. We believe kwamba there's a lot is happening in digital transformation in Tanzania, and our role is to make sure that that platform is very available, na Watanzania wana harness the potential of the digital transformation, and we are making very huge stride. Tunaweza mkaona kwamba Tanzania, lakini katika digital transformation Tanzania is one of the very few countries that are doing very well. Yesterday I mentioned about the cyber security. We are second in Africa and the 37th in the world. We have good and robust systems in place. Sasa mnaweza kuona kwamba we are not good, lakini there's a lot of work that is going on. There's a lot of that we are doing as a country, ambazo na sisi zinaziweka kidogo katika alama za kidunia. Ndugu zangu, nadhani nimeongea mengi, mimi nimalizia hapo.
Thank you very much. Jamani, makofi mengine tena kwa mheshimiwa Daktari Faustin Ndugulile. Kwa heshima yako na ruhusa pia, naomba tuingie kwenye kipengele cha picha. Let's get into the picture taken, and to enable that, itakuwa hapa. Na to enable that, naomba timu isaidie kutoa viti pamoja na meza ili tuweze kupiga hapa juu ili hitokee. Viti, tukitumia viti watu hawatatosha. Kuna mmoja tabaki amesimama. So ningeomba kama tunaweza kwanza tutaacha viti viwili, viti vingine 4 vitoke kabisa pamoja na meza. Asante sana baba. Is there anybody else from the team? Asante kwa kutuazima misuli yako. Sasa in the age of gender equality, where are the women? Jamani. Asanteni sana. To start us off, may I please ask Asha, founder and CEO of Media Convergency, aje kupiga picha na mgeni rasmi. Sawa, naomba ruhusa kunyanyua tena kidogo, maana naona kama hamko katikati, kuna alignment. Yes. Asante sana. Asante sana. Can I please ask the entire panel to join them on stage, please? May I request the full team from Media Convergency to the stage, please? As we're waiting for the team to come through, labda, okay, here we go. Team tafadhali, karibini kwenye stage. Jamani, naombeni tuwapigie makofi. Let's give them a round of applause for all the work they have done to bring this to fruition. Well done, Asha and team. Hapo nyuma tungeweka mixture kidogo. Somehow kuna color coordination hapo. Mpaka mheshimiwa tumecoordinate color. Ni timu nzima. Asante sana team. Naomba wageni wote waalikwa tuelekee kwenye stage tupige picha pamoja na mgeni rasmi. Ndio tutatosha, tutasimama kwa nyuma. Yep. Okay. Kuna wafupi nadhani hamjifahamu. Tumemaliza. Ladies and gentlemen, Honorable Dr. Faustin Ndugulile, tunakushukuru sana. Makofi, mabibi na mabwana. A big hand of applause to yourselves for making it all the way, for engaging throughout. Asanteni sana kwa muda wenu. Thank you so much for your time, for your comments, for your engagement throughout. I truly believe we started something great today. I would like to invite Asha to close us off with a note of thanks and the next steps. However, I'd just like to remind you that as you walk forward, as you walk outside the doors right after we've finished, there is still tea being served, there's still breakfast, so please enjoy.
I hope hawanaga aibu ya kubeba kama mimi. We paid for that. So if you could take snacks and anything you could carry, take away, nomba muulize. Yeah. Yeah, I'm speechless, like literally speechless. Lakini kwanza niombe msamaha kwa kuchelewa kumaliza. Samahani sana, tulijitahidi sana kusema tungemaliza saa 5. Ime-exceed, tunajua kwamba na ratiba, kuna watu wame-cancel ratiba kwa sababu wameheshimu wamalize. Naomba samahani, lakini pia nashukuru sana kwa uwepo wa wote ninyi mpaka sasa, especially kwa kuchelewa huko. Pili, nashukuru sana. It is such an honor, and for us as Media Convergency, we are infants. Tuna bahati tu kuwa na team ya expertise, lakini we are infants and we are still learning. We have been in the field for a long time, lakini it's different, and I've learned a lot to hizi siku mbili while tunaandaa hapa. Yani Khalila, you've done a wonderful job. I think it would have been really hard without you and the rest of the team and everybody who's here. Nawashukuru sana, asante sana. So naahidi, sitaahidi lini, lakini naahidi there is a lot of good conversations metokea leo. So kwa watu wote walio participate, naamini wote tuna emails, tutawapa update and a brief ya whatever has been collected here. We feel like everybody is a stakeholder. Please use that information in your organizations and everything. Na naomba nitumie hiyo note, kaka Irene, when it comes to digital transformation, nimetamani nigusie hilo kwa sababu umesemea ni kwamba it is very expensive. It is expensive ukitaka kuifanya at par. Mimi natamani kama nitapata mwaliko sikika na kuja kabisa ya like free kabisa, free consultancy, tuongee, tuyajenge, tuangalie namna gani tunaweza tuka ease up hii process, kutengeneza plan ya jinsi gani ya kuadapt fully. So it is expensive kweli ukiingia sana, yani miguu miwili na nini, lakini if you make proper plans it will definitely work out. I really wish for each person ambaye kweli anatamani a transform, just call us at your offices kwa sababu we really want change, and the more people change, the more it's going to be vibrant, and the more it's vibrant, the more ICT as a company and a space inakuwa vibrant as well. It benefits us kwa kweli, whether in the long run ama short run. Nashindwa, nilikuwa sijajiandaa, nilijiandaa speech ya kwanza, kwa hiyo nisahau kuandaa ya kufunga, na hisi nitarukaruka. Kama kuna mahala tumekosea naomba mtatusamehe. Tunawashukuru sana, asanteni kwa upendo, and we really hope kwamba tutaendelea kushirikiana. Msichoke tukiwaomba tena kuja kushiriki hapa. Otherwise, asanteni sana. Khalila atanyongoza pale nilipo kwa nimesahau, ataninongoneza, afu maybe nitarudi, lakini naomba nifungie hapo kwamba asante sana. Nashukuru.
Jamani, a hand of applause to Miss Asha Binala. Sidhani kama kuna chochote ulichokisahau. I don't think you've forgotten anything. Jamani, makofi kwake na kwa timu nzima. Asante sana. Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of our program for today. Thank you very much for coming. Please do take photos, keep engaging, post content online, and remember to follow at Media Convergency. Leo tulikuwa hatuna hashtag. Nadhani hicho ndo tulichokisahau. Nadhani umeona sasa. Nilikuwa na watania tu. #digital NGO, #digital transformation. My name is Khalil Mbowe, Unleashed Africa Social Ventures. It was a pleasure serving you today. Have a great afternoon.